A couple of sentences. In spite of the impressive gains made in science and technology, it's a pity that like cancer which is not detected, religious fundamentalism is also spreading fast and dangerously. Some days back, we had the spectacle of fundamentalists barging into a show organized by the Sahmat in Bombay and destroying an exhibition which was exhibiting cartoons already published in various newspapers after the Babri Masjid episode. In Bangladesh, the religious fundamentalists are out for the blood of the woman author who has become controversial after writing her Lajja. In America, Christian fundamentalists are trying to bomb abortion clinics. But the highest award in this field should go to Iran, you know. Iran is crazy about football. They are directly telecasting the World Cup matches, but the audience, you know, by some camera trick, the audience in Iran for these football matches are made to appear fully clothed. See, there are no topless males, there are no women wearing shorts or anything like that. By some trick, the audiences are fully clothed as if it is the thick of winter in America, though the temperature is, as we all know, is in the high 30s and early 40s in America, because they don't want to show women and men wearing the minimum clothes in Iran. This is the different kind of religious fundamentalism which frowns on any kind of independent thinking and is ready to physically assault people who don't agree with them on their own version of what is history, what is religion, and things like that. There are 4 distinguished speakers in this panel. I shall make a very brief introductions of them. They shall talk on the subject for 15 minutes. After 12 minutes, I shall sound a warning which shall allow them time to sum up. And then after the 4 speakers had finished, there will be a question and answer session. The questions, of course, will be from the audience. They should be brief, to the point, because Indian journalists don't ask questions. They ask Times of India editorial kind of things, you know. I hope such a thing won't happen here. So we'll have short, brief, pointed questions addressed to individual speaker, and I'm sure we are all going to have a lively session. Now, the speakers are as follows. Father Myron Pereira, who is to my left, is a Christian priest belonging to the Jesuit religious order. For several years, he worked at the Xavier Institute of Communications, Bombay, as a communications teacher, writer, and producer of audio-visual material. On communalism and religious stereotypes, he has produced, along with others, 2 media kits titled Partly True and Wholly False and Stri Katha. Father Pereira lives at St. Mary's, Masgon, from where he edits Jeevan, the National Jesuit Monthly, and directs the Jesuit Office of Information and Public Relations. We also have Dr. Vasudev Vyas, visiting professor of Hindi and Ayurveda for over 40 years at the Podar College, Bombay. Dr. Vyas is a Vaid by profession and he has made a deep study of the subject under discussion. Next to him is Dr. Zakir Naik, again an MBBS man from Grant Medical College. He is the Secretary General of an institution called Islamic Research Foundation. He is a student of comparative religion, and I am told he can quote verbatim copious passages from all the religious books, including Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. The final speaker is Mr. Ashok Sahani, who has the distinction of translating the controversial book Lajja into Marathi. So we have four speakers of different caliber, different categories. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. I now request Father Pereira to start off, or in the football parlance, to kick off.
Thank you, Mr. Gangadhar. Dear friends, the proposition before us has been stated: religious fundamentalism is an obstacle to freedom of speech. Put in these terms, one can answer quite simply and quite quickly, yes. And after that, there is no more discussion. But if one were to do this, of course, it's very misleading, because I think what's important to understand, and I think a group like this is very well equipped to understand, is why is it that at the close of the 20th century, we have a resurgence of religious fundamentalism? Just when we thought that it should be an age of science and technological progress and, well, in every sense of the word, how is it that religion has come back again to the fore, to the headlines of today's papers, and even more, an aspect of religion which we thought had already died decades ago, religious fundamentalism? Not only that, every major religion has its fundamentalists. The context of today's meeting is the Muslim fundamentalism and the wave of attacks against Taslima Nasreen in Bangladesh, and the instances of that in Pakistan and all over the Muslim world. Yes, but there's also Hindu fundamentalism, there's also Christian fundamentalism, there's also Zionist Jewish fundamentalism. I think perhaps I haven't come across Buddhist fundamentalism yet, but Sikh fundamentalism also. So this is not only a religious phenomenon, but a political phenomenon. And that is, I think, an important thing that we'd like to get behind today in today's discussion. So what I want to do now is not to talk about Christian fundamentalism. That, as I said to some of the organizers a little while ago, is not a relevant political problem in this country. If you were in America, probably you would talk about that. Here it is not important. However, what is important, I think, is to understand the mindset of the fundamentalists. And I'm going to put before you a few points to help to elucidate this. I hope you will come back a little later with questions on what I'm going to say. Fundamentalism is the strict adherence to orthodox religious beliefs and traditions. So it's a strict clinging to, adherence to orthodox religious beliefs and traditions. It's a definition from the Oxford Dictionary. Such as, whatever, the inerrancy of scripture is one, or a literal interpretation of the scriptures is another, and so on. Now, the religious attitude per se is not necessarily fundamentalist. I think this is an important point which has got to be stressed. The fact that you are a religious person need not be, and generally speaking has not been, that you are a fundamentalist. Because otherwise, usually the arguments of most secularists are, if you're a religious person, therefore by that very fact you're fundamentalist, and this is false. I'm a religious person, but I'm not a fundamentalist in any sense of the word. And there are countless others like me, whether Hindus, Muslims, etc. So there are liberal traditions in every religion, and there are oppressive traditions in every religion. So what I'm saying now, and the first point, is that every religion has the capacity to liberate individuals and communities, and has the capacity to oppress individuals and communities. This again is a fact. And if you study the history of every religion, you'll find groups that have been oppressed by them, just as there have been groups that have changed their religion in order to experience freedom and liberation. So, the liberal tradition within any religion would be open to interpretations of scripture, would be open to a dialogue with other opinions, would be open to particularly an acceptance of pluralism. There are many other things, but these three things I think are important in our own context. Firstly, an interpretation of the scriptures. Secondly, a dialogue with other opinions, even if you don't agree with those other opinions, whether they come from within the religion or from outside the religion. So, for example, Christian fundamentalists, as Mr. Gangadhar just mentioned, you have a group called the moral majority in the United States. Many of the television preachers are of the fundamentalist persuasion. And sometimes you hear them on Radio Sri Lanka and sometimes on American TV too. Now, one of the things is that they bomb abortion clinics because they believe very fiercely that to abort a child is tantamount to murder. So therefore they say, we'll kill the murderers. Okay, according to their logic, so that they bomb abortion clinics. So they are not prepared, therefore, for any kind of dialogue in this matter at all. Absolutely. So the first thing would be, therefore, a dialogue with other opinions, an interpretation of the scriptures, and an acceptance of pluralism. Nevertheless, the fundamentalist point of view springs from a theocratic view of society. Now, this is a word which gives me a little time at least to elucidate it. Theocracy is a belief that God alone is the ruler, and all of us are under God's law. And if this is so, therefore, what human beings can do is not to make laws of their own by a kind of human consent or majority consent, but just obey God's laws. And God's laws are revealed to you in the scripture. So any theocratic government has this as a basis and is not open to dialogue at all. So if you don't accept this, you are in error. I am not in error. I am righteous in this matter. So this was a state of government in most countries of the world, including Christian Europe, right until roughly the 17th century. A lot of Christians or Christian governments regularly burnt heretics at the stake, regularly hounded out those who did not believe in certain tenets of the scriptures. You're familiar, for example, with what is called witch hunting. Today we use it for example, we are finding out someone who is of another opinion, and it's called a witch hunt. But the actual historical witch hunts which took place in Germany in the 16th century were horrendous, where thousands of women, on mere suspicion of being a witch, were firstly flogged and then burnt at stake, because witch hunting. Today we use it for example, we are finding out someone who is of another opinion, and it's called a witch hunt. But the actual historical witch hunts which took place in Germany in the 16th century were horrendous, where thousands of women, on mere suspicion of being a witch, were firstly flogged and then burnt at stake, because they were supposed to be the spouses of the devil. You're familiar with the Galileo case, where the church proscribed the teachings of Galileo and asked him to recant and put him in prison. All right. So this is the background, the history of theocracy. Now today, most countries in the world are not theocratic, at least not obviously so. But there is a kind of going back to theocracy in certain parts of the world. And we'll come to this in a moment. So I said, one of the things is law is based on revelation. It's not based, as we would say in a secular country, on reason. It's not based on anything which can be scientifically validated. That's not important. What is important? You believe. Faith is important. If you don't have faith, you get faith, or shut up. The second thing is that those who uphold this law are there by a hierarchical system, not by a democratic one. In a secular government, in a secular country, you choose your representatives, and though sometimes the choice can be faulted and it is sometimes defective, whatever, you have the right to choose them at different times. So a democratic elective process comes into play. In a theocratic government, that is not possible. It is hierarchical, which means to say a certain elite and usually a religious elite decide. In Christian Europe, it was the priests and those whom they influenced. In a lot of Islamic countries, it is the ulema. As we saw recently, 1 or 2 years ago, at the height of the Ayodhya questions, it was the sons and the mahants who came to the fore, and therefore who were strongly then contesting for leadership even within the VHP. So you see, at some time or other, when you get into fundamentalism, you cannot avoid the fact that religious leaders come to the fore and take hold of the whole movement. Now, these are, therefore, 1 or 2 points which I make about the nature of theocracy and how fundamentalism is related to theocracy. Fundamentalism, therefore, the strict adherence of what is revealed and as interpreted by a priestly caste for the rest. Finally, and last point, and I will done. Why is it that fundamentalism has seen such an upsurge today? Just as I said, when we are at the end of a kind of scientific age. I put it to you, this is an indication of the failure of science and the failure of secularism. The fact that in so many third world democratic countries, these governments are slothful and corrupt. In other words, they have not succeeded in bringing about a just and an equitable society. In other words, secularists have entirely discounted religion and have, as it were, thrown it out of the window. And in parts of the secular world, like in the Marxist countries, the communist countries, the Eastern Bloc, it was even forbidden to be a religious practitioner. You could be put to death, and you certainly were a discriminated group in society. So this has been one reason why what you throw out and you try to proscribe comes back again through the back door. Also, we must remember that for thousands, especially in the Islamic world, the experience of the West has been one of oppression. I was remarking some years ago when the Rushdie crisis had just erupted. I was telling M.V. Kamath, we were talking about it, I said, we had absolutely no idea how much this kind of Western liberalism, as it were, symbolized by Salman Rushdie, how much that is hated by the average Muslim. This is something which Salman Rushdie, in his own pride and arrogance, utterly discounted. Now, I think this is something to be taken into account, that the experience of millions of people in the third world, whether they are Islamic countries or whether they are Buddhist countries, whether they are Hindu countries, when they look at the West, which they call the Christian West, which is not the Christian West, but is the post-Christian West, because it is already secular and atheistic. They've got nothing but hatred for that. But this also is a reason why thousands of religious leaders say there's nothing that you can hope for from that kind of civilization. Their children are on drugs. They've got no future at all. Rather, come back to your own roots, come back to Islam, come back to Hinduism, come back to Christianity, come back to the Bible. This is one of the... So this is one reason why fundamentalism is growing in popularity, for example, all over West Asia. Today, young Egyptians are not of the peasant class, not of the laboring class who become fundamentalists. They are those who have returned from the West, students, who form a good bit of the Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo and in other parts of the West Asia. Fundamentalism basically offers a simple solution to go back to a simpler kind of society. I personally don't believe it is possible. It offers a solution which would be valid 2 or 3 centuries ago. It's no longer valid today. Today, in fact, we live in a pluralist society. We live within a scientific age. Fundamentalism would like to close us in and to keep us over there and say, all right, now all of us can believe the same things. We can't believe the same things anymore. Therefore, the challenge is to make a democratic, secular society work. If it works, there's no threat at all from fundamentalism. And all those countries that I was just reading the papers recently, Morocco is a good, Tunisia is a good example of that, where alone of almost of the whole of the Arab world, it has managed to hold the fundamentalists at bay. Because Bourguiba, when he came into power, spent 25% of the budget on education. And that is one reason why, although the fundamentalist parties are there always agitating for power, the Democratic Party still holds. All right, I'll end up right now. There are many more things which can be said, but as you realize, I've tried to give you an idea of how fundamentalism starts and why it has a certain hold today and what we can do, in other words, to keep it at bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. The next speaker is Dr. Vasudev Vyas.
नमोस्तु रामाय सुलक्ष्मणाय देव्यै च तस्यै जनकात्मजायै नमोस्तु रुद्रेन्द्रयमानिलेभ्यो नमोस्तु चंद्रार्कमरुताभ्यः। अध्यक्ष महोदय, मेरे साथी वक्ताओं, देवियों और सज्जनों, विषय अपने आप में बड़ा जटिल है और मैं समझता हूँ इसको मूल रूप में समझ लेना आवश्यक है। जहाँ तक मूल प्रश्न है आज के विचार का कि क्या धर्म अभिव्यक्ति के स्वातंत्र्य में बाधक है, इसका उत्तर मैं निषेध के रूप में दूंगा कि वह बाधक नहीं है। लेकिन उसके बाद मेरे पूर्व वक्ता, वैसे मैं चाहता था कि मैं अन्य वक्ताओं के भी बाद में बोलता, लेकिन अध्यक्ष महोदय ने जो क्रम रखा मुझे स्वीकार है। बाद में हम लोग कुछ डिस्कशन और करेंगे ही। मेरे पूर्व वक्ता ने जिस रूप में बात रखी, मैं क्षमा चाहूँगा, मैं उससे सहमत नहीं हूँ। मैं सनातन वैदिक धर्म का प्रतिनिधित्व यहाँ कर रहा हूँ। जहाँ तक हमारे धर्म का प्रश्न है, मैं समझता हूँ किसी भी धर्म, उन्होंने एक बात आपके सामने रखी कि किसी भी धर्म के फंडामेंटलिस्ट, माने अतिरेकी, शायद उसके लिए आजकल हिंदी में शब्द चल रहा है, वो ये मानते हैं कि धर्म में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं हो सकता, किसी के साथ हम डिस्कशन नहीं कर सकते और उस पर कोई विचार नहीं, डायलॉग नहीं कर सकते और विचार नहीं कर सकते। जहाँ तक सनातन धर्म का प्रश्न है, ये बिल्कुल सही है कि हम ये मानते हैं कि धर्म में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं हो सकता, परंतु उसके बाद हम ये मानने के लिए बिल्कुल तैयार नहीं हैं कि हम किसी के साथ विचार नहीं कर सकते या किसी को हमसे अलग विचार रखने नहीं दे सकते। दो बातों पर ध्यान दीजिएगा। मैं जहाँ तक समझता हूँ, सारी समस्याएं तब से उत्पन्न हुई जब से कुछ नवीन धर्म वालों ने प्राचीन धर्म वालों को कन्वर्ट करके, परिवर्तित करके अपनी संख्या बढ़ाने का प्रयत्न शुरू किया। जब तक ये प्रयत्न नहीं होते थे तब तक इस प्रकार की समस्याएं कभी उपस्थित नहीं हुई थी। आप देखेंगे जितने प्राचीन धर्म हैं, खासकर जैसे सनातन धर्म, वो किसी अन्य को अपने में कभी लेने का प्रयत्न नहीं करता। हम लोग कन्वर्शन के दोनों प्रकार से विरोधी हैं। किसी हिंदू को यदि कोई मुसलमान या ईसाई बनाना चाहे तो भी हमें कष्ट होता है, पर किसी मुसलमान या ईसाई को कोई हिंदू बनाना चाहे तो उसे भी हम गलत समझते हैं। और हम गलत समझते हैं माने ये हमारा वैयक्तिक विचार नहीं है। मैं एक बात और स्पष्ट कर देना चाहता हूँ कि हम लोगों का सिद्धांत ये है कि हमारा अपना कोई विचार नहीं है। जो शास्त्रों का विचार है वो हमारा विचार है। शास्त्रों को समझने में हमारी कहीं भूल हो रही हो तो उसे सुधारने के लिए हम किसी भी क्षण तैयार हैं। और सच तो ये है कि हमारे यहाँ शास्त्रों की परंपरा ये रही है कि विरोधी पक्ष को हमेशा हमने आमंत्रित किया है, उनकी ओर से पहले विचार किया है। हमारे यहाँ पूर्व पक्ष और उत्तर पक्ष की एक प्रक्रिया है। मैंने जानबूझकर हिंदी को इसलिए चुना कि बहुत से ऐसी संज्ञाएं आएंगी, ऐसे शब्द आएंगे, ऐसे टेक्निकल टर्म्स आएंगी कि जिनका अंग्रेजी अनुवाद मैं समझता हूँ संभव नहीं है। बहुत से विद्वानों ने प्रयास किया है, लेकिन इन संस्कृत शब्दों का बिल्कुल सही अनुवाद मैं समझता हूँ कि आज की भाषा में हो नहीं सकता। उसके निकट आप जा सकते हैं पर एकदम सही अनुवाद नहीं हो सकता, क्योंकि शब्द का अर्थ केवल शब्दकोश में जो मिलता है, केवल डिक्शनरी मीनिंग शब्द का अर्थ नहीं होता। उस शब्द के साथ उसकी बहुत सी छायाएं, उसके बहुत से अर्थाभास जो साथ में लग जाते हैं, उन्हें मिलाकर शब्द का अर्थ होता है। सच ये है कि धर्म शब्द का सही अर्थ रिलीजन शब्द नहीं देता, पर हमें व्यवहार करना पड़ रहा है। तो मैं ये कह रहा था कि सनातन धर्म की ये परंपरा रही है कि हम पहले पूर्व पक्ष और फिर उत्तर पक्ष लेते हैं। शंकराचार्य ने यहाँ नास्तिकवाद का समर्थन करना शुरू किया है, वहाँ इतना जबरदस्त समर्थन किया है कि उनके बाद के बहुत से नास्तिक आचार्यों ने ये स्वीकार किया है कि हमारे नास्तिक आचार्यों ने भी हमारे पक्ष का इतना प्रबल समर्थन नहीं किया जितना शंकराचार्य ने किया है। क्योंकि हम ये मानते हैं कि पूर्व पक्ष जितना बलवान होगा हमारा उत्तर पक्ष उतना ही बलवान होगा। यदि पूर्व पक्ष दुर्बल होगा, कमजोर होगा, तो उत्तर पक्ष भी कमजोर रहेगा। इसलिए पूर्व पक्ष बहुत अच्छा बने, ये हमारा प्रयत्न रहता है। उसके बाद हम उसका उत्तर देना चाहते हैं। इसलिए हम अपने धर्म के भीतर या धर्म के बाहर और किसी से वार्तालाप करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, ये तो प्रश्न ही नहीं उठता। तीसरी बात यह है, जो वास्तव में पहली बात है, कि क्या धर्म में परिवर्तन किया जा सकता है। हमारा उत्तर यह है कि धर्म में परिवर्तन नहीं किया जा सकता, क्योंकि जितने भी धर्म हैं, जहाँ तक मैं जानता हूँ, सब ये मानते हैं कि धर्म के आचरण का फल परलोक में मिलता है। इस लोक में हमें जो सुख या दुख मिल रहा है वो इस लोक के किए हुए कर्मों का ही फल है, ऐसा नहीं है। अधिकांश रूप में जिसे हम प्रारब्ध कहते हैं, दैव कहते हैं, अदृष्ट कहते हैं, पूर्व जन्म के कर्मों का फल हमें इस जन्म में भोगना पड़ता है, और इस जन्म में किए हुए अधिकांश पुण्य और पाप का फल हमें परलोक में मिलता है। हमारे जो साथी पुनर्जन्म नहीं मानते, वे भी इतना तो मानते हैं कि मरने के बाद दी एंड नहीं हो जाता, मरने के बाद भी आत्माएं कहीं कहीं विद्यमान रहती हैं, और कोई एक दिन ऐसा आएगा जिसे आप प्रलय का दिन या प्रलय की रात्रि कह लीजिए, या कोई डे ऑफ जजमेंट कह लीजिए, ऐसा कोई एक दिन आएगा जिस दिन ईश्वर आकाश से उतरेगा और उतरकर उन सब जीवों को फिर से पूछेगा कि तुमने क्या क्या कर्म किए हैं और उनका ये फल तुम भोग लो। ये अलग बात है कि वो ऐसा मानते हैं कि हमें एकमात्र यही जन्म मिला हुआ है, इसमें जो कर्म हम कर लें अच्छे या बुरे, उनके फलस्वरूप हमको अच्छा या बुरा फल मिल जाएगा, हम अनंत काल के लिए स्वर्ग या नरक में भेज दिए जाएंगे, ये वे मानते होंगे। हम ऐसा नहीं मानते, अनेक जन्म मानते हैं। पर एक बात सब में समान है, वो ये कि जो कर्म हम यहाँ कर रहे हैं उनका जो फल हमें यहाँ मिल गया वो अंतिम फल नहीं है, उसके बाद भी कोई फल और मिलना बाकी है। माने हम जो कुछ कर्म यहाँ कर रहे हैं उसके लिए वी आर आंसरेबल टू समबडी एल्स, किसी और को हमें कभी जवाब देना पड़ेगा, उत्तर देना पड़ेगा। ये अगर कोई नहीं मानता तो धर्म को नहीं मानता, या आप निश्चित समझ लीजिए। वैसे आस्तिक और नास्तिक की परिभाषाएं भी अनेक हुई हैं, लेकिन मैं इस समय आस्तिक और नास्तिक की यही परिभाषा करना चाहता हूँ, और जो हमारे शास्त्रों से बहुत अंशों में सम्मत भी है, कि जो परलोक को माने, परलोक का अर्थ पुनर्जन्म यहाँ आप मत करिए, हम व्यापक रूप से मरने के बाद कुछ और होता है, इतना जो माने। ईश्वर को भी मानना जरूरी नहीं है। हमारे वैदिक संप्रदाय में भी बहुत से दर्शन ऐसे हैं जो ईश्वर को बहुत उपेक्षित दृष्टि से देखते हैं, पर कर्म फल को वे भी मानते हैं। तो मरने, यहाँ किए हुए कर्मों का हमें मरने के बाद भी कहीं उत्तर देना पड़ेगा, इतना जो मानता है, वो चाहे हिंदू है, चाहे मुसलमान है, चाहे ईसाई है, चाहे पारसी है, चाहे यहूदी है, कुछ भी है, वो धार्मिक या आस्तिक है, ऐसा मानने के लिए हम तैयार हैं। और इतना मानने के बाद आपको आप विचार कीजिए कि जो हम कर्म कर रहे हैं उनका क्या फल होगा, ये निश्चय हम कैसे कर सकते हैं। यहाँ आप डेमोक्रेसी की बात कर लीजिए, ठीक है, आप मेजोरिटी के आधार पर कोई निर्णय कर लीजिए, वो कानून बना दीजिए, लेकिन अगर फल देने वाला कोई और है तो उसने हमारे बनाए हुए कानून को या हमारे बनाए हुए संशोधनों को, हमारे बनाए हुए अमेंडमेंट्स को स्वीकार किया है कि नहीं किया है, ये जब तक निश्चित नहीं हो जाता तब तक हम इन नए संशोधनों को लागू कैसे कर सकते हैं। आप इस पर सावधानी से ध्यान दीजिएगा। संसार में कोई राजा ऐसा नहीं होता जो, ठीक है, वैसे देखिए डेमोक्रेसी पर भी बहुत से विवाद विद्वानों में चल रहे हैं। डेमोक्रेसी एक आज विश्व में बहुत व्यापक हो गई है, अलग बात है, लेकिन ये अत्यंत निर्दोष प्रणाली है, ऐसा नहीं कहा जा सकता। ठीक है, आज बहुत से लोग ये मान रहे हैं कि सब प्रणालियों में सबसे अधिक निर्दोष ये है, ऐसा लोग मान रहे हैं, पर इसमें एक बहुत बड़ा मौलिक आक्षेप ये आता है कि जिस पर शासन करना है उसी के द्वारा शासन होना है, ये मूलतः एक गलत बात है। परिणाम ये होता है कि जिस पर आप शासन करना चाहते हैं उसकी इच्छा के बाहर आप नहीं जा सकते। आप बहुमत की बात कर लीजिए, लेकिन हम सब अच्छी तरह से जानते हैं कि हजारों और लाखों और करोड़ों व्यक्ति जो वोट देने के लिए जाते हैं वे कितने हर विषय के जानकार हो सकते हैं और उनके वोट का क्या मूल्य है। एक पाश्चात्य विद्वान ने एक बार बहुत अच्छा कहा था कि आई कैन टॉलरेट डेमोक्रेसी एज लॉन्ग एज वन जीनियस इज इक्वल टू वन फूल, बट इट बिकम्स अनटॉलरेबल व्हेन टू फूल्स आर मोर देन वन जीनियस। एक मूर्ख और एक बुद्धिमान बराबर है, वहाँ तक फिर भी डेमोक्रेसी को मैं सहन कर लूँगा, लेकिन दो मूर्ख बनकर एक विद्वान को उठा के फेंक दें जब हम क्या करेंगे। तो आज परिस्थिति ये हो रही है, लोक में इसका हम फल भोग रहे हैं। हो सकता है आपको ये अगर लग रहा है कि इससे अच्छी और कोई शासन प्रणाली नहीं, तो आप उसे चलाइए। न शासन प्रणाली के लिए, डेमोक्रेसी को बदल देने की वकालत करने के लिए नहीं खड़ा हुआ हूँ, परंतु धर्म के क्षेत्र में आप डेमोक्रेसी कैसे ला सकते हैं? कौन सा राजा ये कहेगा कि अपराधियों से पूछ लो तुम्हारा कौन सा काम अच्छा है, कौन सा बुरा है, तुम जो कहो वो फल हम दे दें? ये कैसे कोई राजा करेगा? इसलिए हर राजा का अपना एक कानून होता है और उस कानून को पालन कराना वो चाहता है। अगर ईश्वर में कुछ सामर्थ्य है, और ईश्वर सबसे अधिक सामर्थ्यशाली है, ये सभी धर्म मानते हैं, तो ईश्वर अपने कानून में आपके द्वारा किए हुए संशोधनों को स्वीकार करता है कि नहीं, ये पहले जब तक हमें पता न चल जाए तब तक हम परिवर्तनों को स्वीकार नहीं कर सकते। पर इसका अर्थ बिल्कुल नहीं है कि हम अन्य संप्रदाय वालों को, अन्य धर्म वालों को अपने धर्म, मैंने पहले ही कह दिया कि जब तक आप सब धर्म वाले अपने अपने धर्म का पालन करते रहें तब तक ये समस्याएं खड़ी नहीं होती। समस्याएं तब खड़ी, इसलिए सनातन वैदिक धर्म, पारसी धर्म, यहूदी धर्म, जितने पुराने धर्म हैं वो कभी दूसरे को अपने में नहीं देते। इसलिए ये लोग जहाँ कहीं हैं वहाँ अत्यंत निरापद हैं। किसी पारसियों से किसी समाज को आज तक कोई खतरा नहीं हुआ, सनातनियों से किसी समाज को आज तक कोई खतरा नहीं हुआ। अब परिस्थिति यह है कि जब दूसरों को अपने में लेने की बात आएगी तो जबरदस्ती चलेगी। मैं अपने प्रश्न पर आ जाता हूँ, क्योंकि शायद 3-4 मिनट मेरे पास और शेष हैं। मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि हमारे सनातन वैदिक धर्म का इतिहास आप देख लीजिए, उसमें कभी भी अन्य संप्रदाय वालों को या उस संप्रदाय के अंदर वालों को वाणी स्वातंत्र्य या विचार स्वातंत्र्य में बाधा नहीं डाली गई है। वैसे हमारे इतिहास में दैवी और आसुरी दोनों प्रकार की सृष्टियों का वर्णन है, गीता स्वयं बतलाती है, अन्यत्र भी है। जहाँ तक दैवी सृष्टि का प्रश्न है, ये बाधा कभी नहीं आई। राम और रावण का संग्राम, आप रामायण का उदाहरण देख लीजिए। भगवान राम के सामने जब कभी ये प्रश्न आए कि अब क्या किया जाए, अगर धर्मशास्त्र उसका उत्तर देता है तो और किसी की सलाह की आवश्यकता नहीं होती, पर धर्मशास्त्र अगर उसका उत्तर नहीं देता और हमें विचार करना है, अथवा धर्मशास्त्र का यहाँ क्या उत्तर है इसका हमें विचार करना है, वहाँ भगवान राम के यहाँ कभी भी मतभेदों को दबाया नहीं गया। मैं इसके 2 उदाहरण देता हूँ। पहला उदाहरण है जिस समय महाराज दशरथ ने भगवान राम को वनवास का आदेश दिया, लक्ष्मण जी इसके बड़े विरुद्ध थे। उन्होंने भगवान राम से स्पष्ट शब्दों में कहा कि महाराज दशरथ इस समय अपनी पत्नी के वश में आए हुए हैं, वे सोच विचार करके निर्णय नहीं कर रहे हैं, उनका निर्णय धर्म सम्मत नहीं है, इसलिए आप इसे स्वीकार मत कीजिए। भगवान राम ने नहीं कहा कि तुम कौन होते हो बोलने वाले, राजा कह रहे हैं या मैं कर रहा हूँ तुम चुप रहो, ये उन्होंने नहीं कहा। अध्याय के अध्याय वाल्मीकि रामायण में है, जहाँ उन्होंने लक्ष्मण जी को तर्कों से, युक्तियों से और शास्त्र के प्रमाणों से ये समझाया है कि नहीं, महाराज दशरथ भले ही पत्नी के प्रेम के वशीभूत होकर ये कर रहे हों, पर अन्याय नहीं है, अत्याचार नहीं है, धर्म के विरुद्ध नहीं है, इसलिए हमें उसका पालन करना चाहिए। अगर वहाँ ये होता कि अभिव्यक्ति के स्वातंत्र्य को दबा दिया गया होता तो भगवान राम को इतने तर्क देने की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं थी। दूसरा प्रसंग यह है, जब विभीषण जी भगवान राम की शरण में आते हैं, वहाँ सारे मंत्रिमंडल की एक राय थी कि इस समय विभीषण को अपने यहाँ शरण देना खतरनाक है, ये शत्रु का स्पाई है, शत्रु का गुप्तचर है। अब तक क्यों नहीं, अगर ये इतना धार्मिक था तो इतने महीने बीत गए, अब तक कहाँ सोया हुआ था। लेकिन सबको अभिव्यक्ति का स्वातंत्र्य था। भले ही भगवान राम ने अपना निर्णय किया, पर उन्होंने अपना निर्णय किया वो भी सबको बताकर, सबको समझाकर, सबकी सम्मति से। दूसरा प्रसंग मैं महाभारत का लूंगा। महाभारत में भी युधिष्ठिर के यहाँ पूरा अभिव्यक्ति का स्वातंत्र्य था। दुर्योधन के यहाँ द्रौपदी के चीरहरण के समय जब अकेला विकर्ण, एक व्यक्ति, 100 पुत्र थे धृतराष्ट्र के, उसमें से एक व्यक्ति कम से कम धर्म की बात कहने के लिए खड़ा हो गया विदुर के बाद, उस समय कर्ण ने उसे दबा दिया और लोगों ने दबा दिया। तो आसुरी संपदा का जहाँ साम्राज्य रहता है वहाँ किसी को स्वतंत्रता नहीं रहती, और दैवी संपदा का जहाँ प्राबल्य रहता है वहाँ सबको अभिव्यक्ति का स्वातंत्र्य है। अंतिम बात मैं कहूँगा कि यदि सनातन वैदिक धर्म में अभिव्यक्ति का स्वातंत्र्य न होता तो इस देश में वैदिक धर्म के विरुद्ध या उनसे भिन्न और बहुत से धर्म कभी पैदा न हो पाते। जैन और बौद्ध दोनों धर्म वेदों की घोर निंदा करते हैं, जिन वेदों को हम अनादि और अपौरुषेय मानते हैं, उन वेदों के लिए उन्होंने गालियों तक का प्रयोग किया है। त्रयो वेद से कर्तारो धूर्त भंड निशाचराहा, वेद के रचयिता धूर्त है, भाण है और राक्षस है। उनको भी हमने कभी शारीरिक दंड नहीं दिया। मेरे पूर्व वक्ता ने बताया कि गैलीलियो को जेल में डाल दिया गया। आप पश्चिम की बात करते रहिए, भारतवर्ष में आप एक भी उदाहरण ऐसा दीजिए जहाँ किसी वैज्ञानिक को, किसी विचारक को, क्योंकि उसके विचार राज्य के या सरकार के विरुद्ध हैं, इसलिए उसको कभी जेल में डाला गया हो या सताया गया हो। सारे जिन लोगों ने वेदों को गालियां दी, जिन्होंने भगवान राम को गालियां दी, जिन्होंने भगवान के राम को गाली देने, राम पर झूठा आक्षेप करने वाले एक व्यक्ति के आधार पर उसको जेल में नहीं डाल दिया गया प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन एक्ट में। स्वयं भगवान राम ने अपनी प्राण प्रिया पत्नी का परित्याग कर दिया था। आप उदाहरण हमारा इतिहास पूरा देख लीजिए। हमारे देश में वैचारिक मतभेद के आधार पर हमारे यहाँ किसी कन्फ्यूशियस को जहर नहीं दिया गया, किसी गैलीलियो को जेल नहीं दिया गया। वैचारिक विरोध के आधार पर अगर शारीरिक दंड देने का कोई इतिहास में हमारे यहाँ उल्लेख मिलता है तो पहला इतिहास गांधी हत्या का है, और उसकी जिम्मेदारी पाश्चात्य शिक्षा की है, हमारी संस्कृति की नहीं। इस पर बहुत कुछ कहना मुझे शेष है, पर मैं समझता हूँ आगे के डिस्कशंस में मैं कहूँगा। मैं समझता हूँ 1 मिनट शायद और है मेरे पास, मैं इतना ही कह लूँगा कि हमें पाश्चात्यों ने, अंग्रेजों ने इतने गलत इतिहास पढ़ाए हैं कि जिसके कारण आज हमारा नवयुवक उस इतिहास को पढ़ करके पथभ्रष्ट हो रहा है। आर्य भारत में बाहर से आए, आर्य और द्रविड़ ये 2 अलग जातियां थीं। आर्य कोई जाति थी, यही मूलतः गलत है। आर्य भारत में बाहर से आए, यही गलत है। इस पर मैं अधिक इसमें कह नहीं सकता, पर इतनी गलत बात में पढ़ने का परिणाम आज ये रहा कि भारत में उत्तर और दक्षिण का संघर्ष हो रहा है। नहीं तो भारत में उत्तर दक्षिण, आर्य और द्रविड़ का संघर्ष भी कभी नहीं था। और जैन और बौद्ध दोनों धर्म इस देश में हजारों वर्षों से पनपते चले आए, हमने कभी अभिव्यक्ति को रोका नहीं। उसके बाद में मुसलमान या ईसाई भी हमारे देश में आए, जब तक उन्होंने हिंदुओं पर अत्याचार नहीं किए तब तक हमने उनका कभी प्रतिरोध नहीं किया। मैं समझता हूँ इन पर बहुत से प्रश्न होते हैं, और मैं चाहता हूँ कि प्रश्न हो वे हम लोग आगे फिर विचार में रख लेंगे।
Thank you, Dr. Vyas, for a very interesting exposition. I now request Dr. Zakir Naik take the mic.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa qul ja'al haqq wa zaqal batil. Innal batila kana zahuqa. Wa nunazzilu minal Qur'an ma huwa shifaa'un wa rahmatul lil mu'minin. Wa la yazidu adh-dhalimin illa khasara. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Dear Mr. Chairman, my learned speakers, the press, and my dear brothers and sisters, I greet you all with the Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May peace, blessings, and mercy of Almighty God be on all of you. The topic for today's debate is religious fundamentalism a stumbling block in the freedom of expression? What is the meaning of fundamentalist? A fundamentalist is a person who follows the fundamentals. For a person to be a good doctor, he should know, he should follow and practice the fundamentals of medicine. For a person to be a good mathematician, he should know, he should follow and practice the fundamentals of math. In short, he should be a fundamentalist in the field of mathematics. In the same fashion, for a person to be a good Hindu, he should know, he should follow and practice the fundamentals of Hinduism. And for a person to be a good Muslim, he should know, he should follow and practice the fundamentals of Islam. You can't paint all fundamentalists with the same brush. You can't call all fundamentalists as good or all fundamentalists as bad. If a person is a fundamentalist doctor, he's good in his profession. He's a good fundamentalist. If a person is a fundamentalist robber or a fundamentalist smuggler, he's bad in his profession. He is a bad fundamentalist. Regarding the definition given by the Webster's Dictionary of Fundamentalism, fundamentalism was a movement started in America in the early 20th century by the American Protestants who protested against the modernism. And they said there is no inerrancy in the Bible. Previously it was thought that the law and the faith and the belief of the Bible were from God, but not the word itself. The American Protestants, they started a movement and said that every word, every letter written in the Bible is verbatim the word of God Almighty. If any person can prove that the Bible is actually the word of God, then this movement of fundamentalism is a good movement. But if a person can prove that every word in the Bible is not the word of God, then this movement is not a good movement. Regarding the definition given by Oxford Dictionary, my learned speaker, Father Pereira, gave the definition, and I do agree with him with a little bit here in the change of words, that fundamentalism, according to Oxford Dictionary, means adhering strictly to the ancient or fundamental principles of any religion. That's what he said. Maybe he's referring to an old edition of Oxford Dictionary, I don't blame him, but according to the latest edition of Oxford Dictionary, it says that fundamentalism means strictly adhering to the ancient or fundamental principles or doctrines of any religion, especially Islam. The word Islam is mentioned in the latest edition of the Oxford Dictionary. So fundamentalist mainly refers to a Muslim who follows the fundamentals of Islam. If it means that, I'm proud and I'm happy to be a fundamentalist Muslim, because I know that the fundamentals of Islam are good, they are correct, they are scientific. Now going further, that when you use the word fundamentalist, it normally is linked with other words like terrorist or a person who is violent. So the moment you say he's a fundamentalist, it refers to a Muslim person who is violent and who is a terrorist. Islam is against violence and terrorism. Islam comes from the root word salam, meaning peace, meaning submitting your will to Almighty God. It is against violence and terrorism. But it also says that if somebody oppresses you in your self-defense, the last choice that you have to pick up is you have to fight back. The same person may be given different labels by different groups of people. For example, if you refer to the freedom fighters of our beloved country, India, before the independence, if you ask the British government, they will tell you that these fighters, they are terrorists. According to the British government, these fighters were terrorists. But according to the Indians, these fighters were actually freedom fighters or patriots. So the same person, his same activity has got two different labels by two different groups of people. So before you label that person as a patriot or a person who is a terrorist, you have to first analyze who is saying that. If you agree with the British government view that they had a right on India, then you'll agree that these freedom fighters were actually terrorists. But if you agree with the view of the Indians, that these people were actually fighting correctly for their freedom, then you'll agree that they were patriots. The same person can have two different labels. If you mean fundamentalist is a Muslim who's violent and who's a terrorist, by all means, I'm not a fundamentalist. But if it means person who follows the fundamentals of Islam, I'm happy and proud to be a fundamentalist. Now coming to the question, is religious fundamentalism a stumbling block in the freedom of expression? What do you mean by freedom of expression? Before I come to freedom of expression, I would like to throw some light on the points mentioned by my learned speaker, that the fundamentalists are against interpretation of the scriptures and they do not agree for dialogue, which even Dr. Vyas, he objected to the first speaker, and even I object that though I'm a fundamentalist, Islam allows interpretation of the scriptures and Islam also allows a dialogue. It's clearly mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Imran, chapter number 3, verse number 64, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, ta'ala la kalmitum sawa'im baynana wa baynakum. That, O people of the book, O Jews and Christians, come to common terms as between us and you. We can have a common dialogue. And there was one thing which Dr. Vyas didn't agree with the first speaker. He said, that the first speaker mentioned that you cannot make change in the religion. And he said that in his religion, you can't make any changes. Regarding the last point, I differ. In Islam, you can make changes. Please bear in mind, before the Muslims get agitated, let me tell you, let me complete the full sentence. You cannot make any changes in the revelation of God Almighty and in the Sahih Hadith. You cannot make any changes in the Quran or in the Sahih Hadith. But where it comes to Islam, the Sharia law, if the Quran does not mention about that particular problem, or if the Sahih Hadith does not mention that particular problem, you have to get an ijma, ijtihad. You have to get a common gathering of the learned people and you can pass a new resolution. Islam does agree for changes as long as it is not going against the Holy Scriptures and the Sahih Hadiths. regarding is it a stumbling block in the freedom of expression. What do you mean by freedom of expression? If you mean that a person can speak what he wishes without hurting anyone, without causing any harm to any community, I believe Islam is not a stumbling block in the freedom of expression. But if you mean freedom of expression is that a person without hesitation, he can abuse anyone, he can criticize anyone, he can blame anyone, then I would say Islamic fundamentalism is a stumbling block as well as not a stumbling block. Let me clarify my statement. There are various types of freedom of speech. If you say that a person blames anyone, or he criticizes anyone, or he speaks against someone without any proof, without any solid fact, based on falsehood, then I would say Islamic fundamentalism is definitely a stumbling block in the freedom of expression. Because Quran clearly mentions in Surah Humza, that is chapter number 104, verse number 1, وَيْلُلِّ كُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ, woe to every kind of scandal monger and backbiter. Again the Quran in Surah Hujurat, chapter number 49, verse number 11 and 12 says, O you who believe, do not defame, do not be sarcastic, do not give offensive nicknames to anyone else. O you who believe, do not spy on one another. Do not speak against each other's back. Do not backbite. And the Quran continues, are you willing to have the dead meat of your brother? And the Quran replies, nay, surely you'll abhor it. What is the meaning that if you backbite, it means you're having the dead meat of your brother? Because it's a double crime. Speaking bad about anyone without any proof itself is a sin. And eating dead meat itself is a sin, and the doctor can testify that if you eat dead meat, you can have several diseases. But speaking false against someone behind the back is double crime. It is as though you're eating the dead meat of your own brother. The cannibals who eat dead meat and who also eat human beings, they don't touch their own brother. So if you backbite, it is as though you're eating the dead meat of your brother. Now some people may say that freedom of speech, if you speak or if you write, does not harm anyone physically. I do agree with them. I do agree with them. But let me tell you, many a time, the mental torture is much more harmful than physical torture. It is much more long-lasting than physical torture. I'd like to give an example. Suppose the teacher picks up her students in the classroom and without any reason, without any solid proof, slaps that small child who's very obedient, who's a very good student. That child will feel the pain of the slap for a few seconds or maybe for a few minutes. But the mental trauma that he was insulted in front of the classroom is much more lasting and much more damaging. Let's take another example. If a teacher without any reason calls that same child in the staff room and slaps him. And take another example that the teacher in front of the classroom abuses that child, abuses that student, calls him a cheat, calls him a fake, and all sorts of nonsense. Let me tell you that the second example of the teacher insulting that student, calling him a cheat and giving him offensive name is much more harmful as compared to slapping him in a small closed room with no one around. So speech and writing can cause more harm, sometimes, not always, than physical torture. Therefore it is said that pen is mightier than the sword. Now what does Quran talk about freedom of speech? Quran is one of the only holy scriptures which I know of which gives mankind a way how to prove the Quran wrong. It tells the people that if you want to prove the Quran wrong, do so and so things. And it gives several challenges. Amongst one of the challenges is from Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, which states, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. That do not they consider the Quran with care? Had it been from anyone besides Allah, there would have been many discrepancies. There would have been many contradictions. So if any human being, maybe a Muslim or non-Muslim, if he wants to prove the Quran wrong, the only thing he has to do is take out force in the Quran. It is so easy to prove the Quran wrong. But same time Quran says, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ, produce your proof, in kuntum sadiqin, but if you are truthful, produce your proof. All these so-called giants of literature, Salman Rushdie, as well as Taslima Nasreen, do they think they have given proof for the allegation against the Quran? Qul hatu burhanakum, produce your proof. But if you are speaking the truth, Quran gives freedom of speech, Islam gives freedom of speech, but with proof. Some people, as you may know, many of the Indian journalists as well as writers, they quote the Quran out of context. They misquote the Quran. The very famous quotation, which I believe all of you may be knowing, that Quran mentions, wherever you find a kafir, you kill him. Indirectly, Quran is saying that wherever you find a Hindu, the Muslim should kill him. Let me tell you, the word kafir does not mean a Hindu. It means a person who conceals the truth. It means a person who rejects the truth. And have we given the context? I'd like to give you an example. Suppose America and Vietnam, they're having a war against each other. And during the battlefield, the American president or the Army General of America gives an order that wherever you find Vietnamese, you kill them. And later on, that thing happened decades earlier, several years ago, and today you say that the American president said that wherever you find a Vietnamese, you kill him. It's out of context. He was saying it in the battlefield, because during the battlefield, the opposite party was the enemy, and if they are going to try to kill you, you have to defend, you have to fight. So in the same fashion, the Quran mentions that when these unbelievers come to attack you, come to kill you, don't get scared, fight them. And if necessary, kill them in context. Only those people who are fighting against you, not innocent people. So please don't quote out of context. Please don't misquote. Regarding the last type of freedom of expression, that you can blame anyone, you can criticize anyone with solid facts. Again, they are subdivided into two types. Some facts are meant to be secret, some are not secret. Suppose a government official working in the American government, he tells all the details of the American Army, of the American Navy, of the American Air Force to the enemy. He is speaking the truth, mind you, with proof he is giving you, with photocopies, with photographs, with blueprints, all the secrets of the American government. Do you think the American government will give that person an award? If someone does that to same to the Indian government, do you think the Indian government will give that traitor an award? Will it give that person a Bharat Ratna? Surely not. It will hold him on trial and punish him. So such type of truths which are meant to be secret, if revealed, Quran is against. He is called a munafiq, a hypocrite. Come to the last type. That can you speak against, can you defame, can you criticize with proof, which is not a secret. Example, a government official in America speaks against the corruption of the government in America. Quran gives them full right. Quran encourages such truth to be told in public against falsehood. Such truth, Quran always agrees. And I started my lecture with an ayat from the Quran. I'd like to end it with the same, which says, وَقُلْ جَعَلْ حَقُّ وَذَاقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا وَنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ الشِّفَاءُ وَرَحْمَةُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا. Which means, when truth is hurled against falsehood, falsehood perishes. For falsehood is by its nature bound to perish. The Quran was revealed in stages, and it's a mercy and healing for the believers. As for the people of untruth, it is nothing but loss after loss. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
That was quite a provocative speech, provocative in a very positive manner. It sets us thinking. And our last speaker is Mr. Ashok Sahani, who is the translator of Lajja into Marathi. Mr. Sahani, please.
Well, friends, apparently the problem seems to be that every religion has a book. And we, living in the pagan of the 20th century, will not be satisfied with the book that was written maybe 1,500 years back, or 2,000 years back, or 5,000 years back, as Dr. Vyas may claim. The hoary ancient times when the Vedas were compiled. So one would not be, one would be a bit puzzled if the last word has been said some 5,000 years back or 1,500 years back. I mean, of course, the journalists will not agree with this because they have to bring out the issue every day. They are the dealers in words. So, I mean, it's difficult for a journalist, it's almost impossible for a journalist to concede that the last word has already been said. Then, well, if the last word has already been said, what's he doing? What's he busy with? What's he writing? Now, to come to the point, Salman Rushdie had in an article written a long time back, I mean before he wrote the Satanic Verses, had stated that the politicians and the writers are in enemy camps because they fight over the same territory. The territory is reality. The politicians would like the reality to be shown in a certain perspective, certain single perspective, at the expense of all other perspectives, possible perspectives. Whereas a literary person, an author, would like the reality to be presented from as many angles as possible. So the fight is between a certain official perspective and the possible unofficial perspectives. Now you may say that, I mean, this has been said about the politicians. It has nothing to do with the religious fundamentalists. But the politicians are just a shade lesser than the religious fundamentalists. You know, they have their own ideology. And if they stick to their ideology, if they take the word of the ideology as the last word, then they're as bad or worse than the fundamentalists. We have the examples in Soviet Russia, a lot of examples for them. But now, if the journalists think that they are the dealers of the words, the supreme dealers of the words in today's world, then this episode of Taslima Nasreen is a pointer that the word doesn't belong to the journalist. The word belongs to the poet. As the poets from all times have claimed that the word belongs to them, the word does not belong to the legislators. The word does not belong to the founders of religions. The word belongs to the poet. And so the conflict has arisen when the Calcutta newspaper Statesman sent a correspondent to Taslima Nasreen in a sojourn in Calcutta on her way back to Dhaka from Paris and interviewed her. The poor journalist did not know the difference between Quran and Sharia. So Taslima was quoted wrongly, Taslima protested against it, and the letter was printed, and possibly the Statesman people thought that as good democratic gentlemen, I mean, we have settled the issue, but not so. Less than a month afterwards, the people in a country asked for the blood of Taslima. And the reason given is the interview that was published in the Statesman. I had imagined that the Indian newspapers will have the sincerity to say we are sorry. If somebody's life has been put into peril because of what a certain newspaper published wrongly, and it's freedom of expression also means that you have the freedom to say you are sorry. It's not like you are always in the right. You may not be always in the right. But that's not been done. And I think we have to think seriously. Suppose, for instance, for whatever reasons, Taslima loses her life. Her blood would be on the head of an Indian newspaper. And so also on the head of the fundamentalists, but also on the head of an Indian newspaper. Now you have to decide which one or who are the blocks, who are blocking the freedom of expression, the newspapers, the fundamentalists, or together, both of them. For an unofficial practitioner of words, the poet, the newspapers and the fundamentalists, the largely circulated newspapers and the largely followed religions may not make much difference. There may not be much difference between them. That's all.
Settlewood from Communalism Combat, Dr. Zakir Naik, wanted to ask him whether he considers the attack on Dr. Bedar for saying that Hindus are not kafirs but murtads by, he was threatened with his life. Was that a fundamentalist attack on his life and freedom of expression or not?
What is the meaning of kafir? I told you that kafir means a person who conceals the truth or rejects the truth. And what is the meaning of murtad? Murtad is a Muslim who, after he has accepted the faith, he converts to another faith. That's called a murtad.
मुझे उनसे इतना ही पूछना है कि जो चारवाक से लेकर फुले आगरकर तक सारे रिफॉर्मिस्ट हुए, उन्हें जो तकलीफें झेलने पड़ी, वो हिंदू धर्म के उदार मन की निशानी है या नहीं?
वैचारिक विरोध के आधार पर शारीरिक कष्ट किसी को दिया जाए, इसका पहला उदाहरण गांधी हत्या का है।
सावित्रीबाई फुले पर भी पत्थर फेंके गए थे। गांधी हत्या पहला उदाहरण नहीं है, शंभुक का भी पहले उदाहरण है। हाँ। इतना लंबा जाने की जरूरत ही नहीं है ना।
मैं इस आक्षेप से सहमत नहीं हूँ कि चारवाक का इतिहास मिटा दिया गया है।
कुरान की मजम्मत के लिए क्या आप वो इस्लामी सजाएं तजवीज करेंगे जो इस्लाम में कही गई है?
Again, brother, let me clarify. Wherever the criminal law is there in any country, you take whether Saudi Arabia, whether Iran, whether Pakistan, whether America, whether England, whether India, the criminal law has to be common. The civil law can change.
The fundamentalists of Bangladesh are themselves responsible for bringing Taslima Nasrin into the limelight by announcing hefty prices on her head. If they had instead ignored her and allowed her to have a say, this issue would not have risen at all, and perhaps it would not have come here to discuss this subject.
I believe the journalists of India and the papers of India, they are much more wiser.
Dr. Naik, do you think the people who have given this punishment, announced, pronounced, whatever, have given her that opportunity?
I read in the papers, in one paper it mentions she's 29 years old. One paper she's 31. One paper says 39. One paper says she's a plain MBBS doctor. The other paper says she's a gynecologist. The other paper says anesthetist. You ask me what is she, I say I don't know.
आपने कहा कि हिंदू धर्म में संवाद का बहुत महत्व है। क्या आपकी दृष्टि में बाला साहेब ठाकरे, लाल कृष्ण आडवाणी, ये लोग हिंदू है?
एक बात भी मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि आप स्वयं अपने आप से ही पूछ लीजिए, या ये इस प्रश्न का सबसे ज्यादा सही उत्तर लाल कृष्ण आडवाणी या बाल ठाकरे साहब ही दे सकते हैं।
You said that this journalist, they have put life of Taslima Nasrin in problem, and he says that Indian media is trying to save the life of Taslima Nasrin. I want to know what is right.
The problem is not that simple, of course.
आपके हिसाब से कर्म किसको बोलेंगे?
हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों का जहाँ तक प्रश्न है, हमारे यहाँ प्रातः काल से लेकर रात्रि तक और रात्रि से लेकर प्रातः काल तक 24 घंटे 12 महीने और जीवन भर शरीर, इंद्री, मन से जो कुछ चेष्टा, जो क्रिया हम करते हैं वो सब करना है।
कर्म क्या है? व्याख्या क्या है? आप बोलिए। सुबह मुंह धोना ये कर्म से नहीं मिलेगा।
मुझे आप ये बता सकते हैं कि किसी सनातन धर्म के किसी शास्त्र में हिंदू वर्ड लिखा हुआ है, या ये लिखा हुआ है कि ये हिंदू धर्म भी कोई आने वाला है?
एक प्रथा रही है, किसी का पहला अक्षर अंतिम अक्षर मिलाकर पूरा शब्द बन जाता है। आज भी ये प्रथा अन्य भाषाओं, डॉक्टर में DR लिख देते हैं। वैसे हिमालय से लेकर इंदु सरोवर पर्यंत का जो देश है वो हिंदू देश है, इसलिए हिंदुओं का जो स्थान है वो हिंदुस्तान है।
If you agree with that definition, even I am a Hindu. This definition has also been agreed by Swami Vivekananda that Hindu is a geographical definition, meaning those people living on this side of the Indus Valley civilization. By that I am a Hindu. But the religion should be called a Vedantist religion, those who follow the Vedas.
It has been quoted by Taslima Nasrin, as it is said, that women is your tilt, you may go as you like. Do you like to give any comment on this?
Quran is very scientifically based, telling do not approach your wife when during the menstrual courses. And then the verse continues. The next verse says that your wives are like the tilt. Approach your tilt when you like.
By the very nature, Sanatan Dharma is fundamentalist. That means you want to go against secularism. Then how can you blame Muslim fundamentalism?
I never criticize the Muslim fundamentalism in the way it's being done. If Dr. Zakir Naik is correct, the way in which he put the principles, that fundamentalism means that we should have faith and we should have knowledge of the fundamental principles of Islam and we should follow and practice it, then I 101% agree with him. This type of fundamentalism is always welcome.
You can't call all fundamentalists as good or all fundamentalists as bad.
Fundamentalism is the strict adherence to orthodox religious beliefs and traditions.
Maybe he's referring to an old edition of Oxford Dictionary, I don't blame him. But according to the latest edition of Oxford Dictionary, it says that fundamentalism means strictly adhering to the ancient or fundamental principles or doctrines of any religion, especially Islam.
I'm a religious person, but I'm not a fundamentalist in any sense of the word.
I'm proud and I'm happy to be a fundamentalist Muslim.
These three things I think are important in our own context. Firstly, an interpretation of the scriptures.
Apparently, the problem seems to be that every religion has a book.
Secondly, a dialogue with other opinions, even if you don't agree with those other opinions.
हम ये मानने के लिए बिल्कुल तैयार नहीं हैं कि हम किसी के साथ विचार नहीं कर सकते.
Islam allows interpretation of the scriptures and Islam also allows a dialogue.
हम ये मानते हैं कि धर्म में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं हो सकता.
You cannot make any changes in the revelation of God Almighty and in the Sahih Hadith. You cannot make any changes in the Quran or in the Sahih Hadith. But where it comes to Islam, the Sharia law, if the Quran does not mention about that particular problem, or if the Sahih Hadith does not mention that particular problem, you have to get an ijma, ijtihad. You have to get a common gathering of the learned people, and you can pass a new resolution.
We can now have the question and answer session. There are a couple of rules to be observed. The speakers will have to stand up, identify themselves, and give the name of their publication. Because I expect a fusillade of questions, I think it should be one question per person. The question preferably should be directed to one particular speaker. And as I mentioned before, please be brief and do not try to give the answer to your own question. That should be left to the four eminent gentlemen who enlightened us to a great detail. So, fire away. Yeah.
My name is Javed, and I'm not from any publication. I just happened to read your advertisement in Times of India, and I thought I'll spend a good afternoon here. In any case, my question is directed to Mr. Dr. Zakir Naik. But before that, I want to clarify a point said by Mr. Sahani, who said that Taslima has been quoted wrongly. In any case, if you could see the 31st January 94 Time magazine issue reported by Mr. Fazan Ahmad, there she has said that the sun revolves around the earth. Okay, and I mean, how can we believe such unscientific thing if it is in the Quran? And secondly, she has blamed Islam for the high rate of female infanticide in Bangladesh. I mean, I think these are, is it in the Quran? Can you clarify?
Brother Javed has posed me two questions. Depends upon the chairperson whether he allows me to answer both or not. I will answer the...
He has the beginner's luck, so he has asked two questions.
Okay,
in future it won't be permitted, only one question.
Okay. The first question he said was in the Time magazine, which happens to be one of the most authentic magazines in the world. I do agree it was reported on the 31st of January that she said that Quran mentions that the sun revolves around the earth. And if we believe in such teachings, how can we progress? I do agree with the second statement. If we believe in such statements, how will we progress? But regarding the first part of the allegation, that the Quran mentions that the sun revolves around the earth, I want proof. Qul hatu burhanakum. Let us produce a proof. Where does the Quran say that? What she's referring to, brother, is mainly a verse in the Quran. In Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 33, which says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. That it is Allah who has created the night and the day, the sun and the moon, each one traveling in its own orbit. The same thing is repeated in Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 40. كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. Each one traveling in orbit with its own motion. The Quran does not say that the sun revolves around the earth. The Quran says the sun and the moon, each one traveling in its own orbit. The Arabic word used is yasbahun, coming from the root word sabaha, describing the motion of a moving body. If you say a man is doing sabaha on the floor, it means he is not standing. It means he is walking or running. If you say a man is doing sabaha in water, it does not mean he's floating. It means he's swimming. Same way, if you use the word sabaha for a heavenly body, it means rotating about its own axis. So the Quran mentions the sun and the moon rotate, they travel in a motion that they revolve and they rotate about its own axis. Now again, this verse had put me a little bit doubts because I had passed my ICSE in 1982 from St. Peter's School. And there in geography I learned that the sun did not rotate. The sun revolved, fine, but it was stationary. It did not rotate about its axis. And the Quran mentioned that the sun rotates about its axis. So I was a bit worried. And then I had to do a little bit of research. And then I came to know that according to the recent advances in science and astronomy, we come to know that even the sun rotates about its axis. And to prove it, you can take equipment in the laboratory, and since you can't look at the sun directly, the image of the sun can be put on a tabletop. And the sun has got certain holes, like black spots. And those black spots take about 25 days to rotate completely. So in short, the sun takes about 25 days to rotate. So the Quran is not backward, it is more up to date. I want to ask Taslima Nasreen that who could have written this 1400 years ago, that the sun and the moon, وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ, that the sun and the moon, each one travel in its own orbit, means revolving and rotating. Ask her. The Quran does not mention at all that the sun rotates or revolves around the earth. That's a misinterpretation. Since the chairman has given me permission, regarding the second part of the question, and she has alleged that it is because of Islam that there is such a high rate of infanticide, female infanticide in Bangladesh. She alleged that. I want her to tell me, quote me one verse of the Quran which says that you should kill female children. In fact, according to the BBC report, in the program assignment, the title of that small clipping was Let Her Die. A British reporter, Emily Buchanan, she came from UK and she did a survey on female infanticides, and India happens to have the maximum number. And according to her, every day, more than 3,000 fetuses are being aborted on being identified that they are females. 3,000 fetuses in our mother country. And if you multiply this by 365, more than 1 million fetuses on being recognized that they are female are being aborted. Why don't you read it in the headlines in our papers? Let the papers give it on the front page every day until this female infanticide is stopped. And According to the Tamil Nadu government report, out of the live births of female children, out of 10, 4 are put to death. 4 are put to death. It had to be a Britisher to come and tell us Indians what's the rate of female infanticide in our country. Now coming to the point, what does Quran speak about female infanticide? She cannot quote any verse. I challenge her to quote any verse from the Quran which says female children should be put to death. In fact, if you read Surah Takwir, see I'm going with quotation. Taslima Nasreen only says Quran says that, Quran says this. How can a layman who has not read the Quran, or even if he has read the Quran, where will he find which verse says this, what she's saying? So you have to take it for granted. Give benefit of doubt that the Quran does say that the sun revolves around the earth, or you have to agree that it believes in female infanticide. If you read the Quran in Surah Takwir, chapter number 81, verse number 8 and 9, it says that when the female child, when she's buried alive, and when she cries out, for what crime has she been killed? On the day of judgment, she'll cry out, for what crime she has been killed. So female infanticide has been completely forbidden in Islam. In fact, all sorts of female infanticides and killing of children has been prohibited. It's mentioned in Quran, in Surah Al-Isra, chapter number 17, verse number 31, as well as in Surah Anam, chapter number 6, verse number 151, which says, kill not your children for want of sustenance. It is Allah who will provide you and your children for sustenance. In fact, Quran rebukes the thought of a person rejoicing on the birth of a male child and his face being sad on the birth of a female child. It's mentioned in Surah Nahl, chapter number 16, verse number 58 and 59. Hope that answers the question, brother.
Father Pereira wants to say something on this particular issue.
I just want to make a general comment, which I think is important at this stage. You often hear people say, oh, the Quran says this, which is an obscurantist thing. Oh, Hinduism says that, which is against progress. Oh, you can prove these things from the Bible and so on. Be very careful, firstly, when you hear things. Often these are vague statements made, as Dr. Naik has pointed very clearly, which have no reference at all. That's the first thing. Secondly, often religious scriptures are used by politicians and are used by obscurantists to support their own prejudices. Classic instance of racism and the Bible. You know that a lot of Western Christianity through the centuries has been racist, and they have used the Bible to defend it. It's absolutely false, but here it is politics which comes to use religion for its own purposes. Remember what I said at the beginning. Every religion has a liberative element which can emancipate you, but can also oppress you, depending on how these things have been twisted. So I make this general comment because often you hear statements like this, and then they will blame, okay, Muslims, see, Muslims, what else? Or Christians, of course, Christians, or Hindus like this, or Sikhs, whatever. Be very careful, because this is the typical kind of prejudice, actually, which only, as it were, creates turbulence and does not help to clear any doubts.
More questions?
Ista Settlevat from Communalism Comeback, Dr. Zakir Naik, wanted to ask him whether he considers the attack on Dr. Bedar for saying that Hindus are not kafirs but murtads he was threatened with his life. Was that a fundamentalist attack on his life and freedom of expression or not?
Sister has posed the question that the person, Mr. Bedar, who said that Hindus are not kafirs and they are murtads. Therefore, is it right that the fundamentalist, they threatened his life? Is that a curb of freedom of expression or not? And life. Again, 2-3 questions. Regarding the first part, that whatever that Mr. Bedar said, that Hindus are not kafirs, but they are murtads, does not have any base, because he may not be well versed in the Arabic language. What is the meaning of kafir? I told you that kafir means a person who conceals the truth or rejects the truth. It does not mean that a kafir has to be a Hindu. He can be a Hindu, he may not be a Hindu. I will come to the complete answer. So only if I justify the meaning can I justify my answer, sister. If I don't justify the meaning, my answer will have no relevance. Because Quran always says, Qul hatu burhanakum, produce your proof. While giving your answer, give your proof. Without proof, I don't give comments. So firstly, kafir does not mean a Hindu. It may be a Hindu, may not be a Hindu. And what is the meaning of murtad? Murtad is a Muslim who, after he has accepted the faith, he converts to another faith. That's called a murtad. So Mr. Bedar's explanation has got no relevance at all. Neither is it correct literally. It does not have neither a head nor a tail. Regarding whether those Muslim people, first, were they fundamentalists or not, I don't know. Were they right in putting a death sentence? I would say without proof, no one has the right to put a death sentence. If they gave an opportunity to clarify himself, and if he falters, or if he had abused the Quran, then it's a different question. Depending upon what proof did Dr. Bedar give to those Muslim students. Otherwise, I would say that without any proof, if those Muslims have called for his death, it is completely wrong. It's against Islam. Hope that answers the question, sister.
Can anyone call for a death sentence except the High Court judges?
Fine, you can ask me a question. I thought my answer was over. The second question, I'll give a second answer. If it's based on truth, does a person have a right to pass a death sentence? It is like you asking me if the Indian government has proof that a person who has told the secrets of the country, of the army, of the navy, of the air force, has told to somebody else, and if he's caught and it's proved that he actually betrayed the country, the Indian government will punish with proof. Same way, if there is proof that he has betrayed or spoken something wrong, if there's proof, then I feel he requires punishment. Hope that answers the question. That's the second part of the question. Is a death sentence, or if you say first part, no problem. Can you give death sentence? See, every crime, the punishments given are various. Like for example, if you read in the trains, if you pull the chain without any reason, 500 rupees fine and 3 months imprisonment. So if you're caught, one judge may give you 500 fine, the other judge may give you 500 fine and 1 month. Some judge may give you only 3 months, some judge may give you both. The punishment differs from each judge to each judge. Regarding what does religious fundamentalism talk about if someone blasphemes, we haven't used that word, but I'm using it. Someone blasphemes, what does the Quran say? I'll quote the Quran. The Quran in Surah Maida, chapter number 5, verse number 33 states that the punishment for anyone who wages war against Allah, against God Almighty and His Messenger, or strives, does jihad, strives with might and main, to create mischief in the land, his punishment is either execution or crucifixion or chopping off of limbs of the opposite side or exile. This is the law given in one verse of the Quran. Other verses say that if possible, you speak with Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal mawizatil hasna wajadilhum billati ya ahlan. It is said in Surah Nahl, chapter number 16, verse number 125. Invite all to the way of thy Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them, and debate with them, and reason with them in ways that are best and most gracious. If you ask me, what would I do to Taslima Nasreen, since Quran gives so many options, I would say I would call her for a public debate.
But the first alternative you would reject out of hand.
That depends upon the judge. The punishment may differ on every judge. Every punishment, if enough proof is given, if you read, since you asked, the topic is religious fundamentalism, if you refer to the Bible says, and Father can correct me if I'm wrong, in the 3rd book of the Old Testament, in Leviticus, chapter number 24, verse number 16, it states that any person who blasphemeth the name of thy Lord, he should certainly be put to death. Certainly be put to death. And the congregation, Father, if you want the Bible is available here. If you think I'm misquoting, I'm quoting verbatim. Father, from whichever version you want, whether the King James version or the Douay version. I'd like to complete the quotation. If you're a fundamentalist Christian, you have to follow the Bible. The Bible says in Leviticus, chapter number 24, verse number 16, that anyone who blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall certainly be put to death. And all the congregation shall surely stone him, even the stranger. For anyone who's born in the land and blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall be put to death. So if you're a good Christian, what does the Bible say? Anyone who blasphemeth the Lord, he should be put to death. There may be other options also given in the Bible, but this is one of them.
It's an important point, so let me give you a slightly different point of view. There's such a thing in the world as mob justice or rough justice or lynching. You're familiar with these terms. In the United States, for example, for many years, even until very recently, if you were a black, a group of white men could just say, he tried to rape my daughter, and they would lynch you on the spot. So in the same way, please realize that there's such a thing as rough justice, and a lot of this is taking place and sometimes in Islamic countries. I have here a report on which comes in from Pakistan, and the title is "Blasphemy Laws Are So Vague That Anyone Can Be Murdered." I can give this to anyone if you want to make Xerox copies of it. It's unfortunate. Probably the only country in the Muslim world right now that has enough of ulema to handle these cases against the Shariat is Iran. That's why you never hear cases of this in Iran. But many other instances where you appeal to the Shariat or you appeal against to an interpretation of the Quran, and you find invariably that Maulana are much too politicized, and a lot of this thing comes from politics. So therefore, to say that Islam is responsible again is wrong. You've got to see the political context of a country, like Bangladesh, for example, like Pakistan, for example, like Algeria, for example, the Islamic Salvation Front, and other places like this. So this is very important to keep in mind. The instances of Dr. Bedar, etc., is what you'd call mob justice. I don't like you, you've blocked him, come out, I'll kill you. And this is what they do, you're killed. Who has the right to execute? Only the state, after a due process of trial. The trouble is, in many countries, the democratic process is so weak, and we find this so in Bangladesh today. There's a fighting going on between the Prime Minister and the other opposition leader, between Zia and Hasina. And this is one reason why these things are taking place. Now they're coming out and say, no, don't ever threaten the woman, otherwise be careful. Note that the Maulana who has put that reward of 50,000 takas has not yet been arrested. There are 3 persons who have put rewards upon the head of Taslim, but there's only the public notification has gone out that action can be taken, but no one has taken action yet. You see, many of these things do happen. And recently you had a case, probably you picked up in the papers, an Ayatollah Khamenei, I think, said that one Ayatollah can issue a fatwa which negates a previous fatwa. Why is it taking such a long time to say this? Why is it taking such a long time? In politics, you know from your own study of the whole Salman Rushdie case that the reason why Ayatollah Khomeini issued that fatwa was entirely political. You know it. So don't make Islam a scapegoat for the tricks of politicians. Don't make that. Christians have done this, plenty of examples of that. Hindus have done this, plenty of examples of that. Muslims are doing it, plenty of examples. Sikhs have done it, all right. You always have this kind of continual tension between religion and politics, and one will use the other. I'll give you plenty of examples from Christianity if you are patient to wait the evening. Plenty of examples. You see? So it's important to keep these two things in mind. Rough justice, one thing, and there's no way in which we can excuse this kind of thing. But unfortunately, governments are too weak to enforce it, and that's why you have what you have.
Mr. Wagle.
डॉक्टर नायक ने डिबेटिंग स्किल्स तो बहुत सारे दिखाए हैं. मैं उनसे हाँ या ना में जवाब चाहता हूँ. तस्लीमा के खिलाफ जिन लोगों ने फतवा इशू किया, उस अमानवी फतवे का आप समर्थन करते हैं या निषेध करते हैं? Only one word.
Brother has asked me the question that do I agree with the death sentence given by certain people, whatever it is, maybe 2, 3 or 4, do I agree with the death sentence given on the head of Taslima Nasreen? In one word, believe me brother, I'm a Muslim fundamentalist. Fundamentals of Islam do not allow me to give the answer in one word. Do not allow me. That's right, I'm telling you I will not answer, because I will have to call her in the court of law, and after I've examined her, after I've integrated her, and after she's given an equal opportunity to support herself, after she has been given an equal opportunity to support herself, can the death sentence be passed? Otherwise, no, I have not met her. I have not met her. If you have contacts, you can get in front of me. I can't. Islam does not give me the permission, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm not exactly a full-time journalist, but Dr. Naik, do you think the people who have given this punishment, announced, pronounced, whatever, have given her that opportunity?
Brother has asked the question that have those people who have passed the death sentence, have they given her opportunity to clarify herself? I don't know. I don't know. Believe me, I don't know. Maybe, may not be. I don't know. I read in the papers, the news keep on altering. No, see, I'm speaking the truth. How do I know? I don't know personally. I read in the papers. In one paper it mentions she's 29 years old. One paper she's 31. One paper says 39. One paper says she's a plain MBBS doctor. The other paper says she's a gynecologist. The other paper says anesthetist. You ask me what is she, I say I don't know.
तो व्यास से पूछना चाहता हूँ कि बहुत सारे डॉक्टर नायक से हुए, इनसे पूछना चाहता हूँ कि इन्होंने हिंदू धर्म के बारे में बहुत सारी बातें कही, सनातन हिंदू धर्म के बारे में, और हिंदू धर्म में रिफॉर्म्स हुए क्योंकि हिंदू धर्म का सनातन हिंदू धर्म का मन बड़ा उदार था, इसे उन्होंने कहा। मुझे उनसे इतना ही पूछना है कि जो चारवाक से लेकर फुले आगरकर तक सारे रिफॉर्मिस्ट हुए, उन्हें जो तकलीफें झेलने पड़ी वो हिंदू धर्म के उदार मन की निशानी है या नहीं?
चारवाक से कहां तक?
अभी आज तक भी लीजिए आप।
इसका सीधा उत्तर यह है, मैंने पहले अपने वक्तव्य में कह दिया था कि वैचारिक विरोध के आधार पर शारीरिक कष्ट किसी को दिया जाए, इसका पहला उदाहरण गांधी हत्या का है। चारवाक को हम लोग बृहस्पति का अवतार मानते हैं।
सावित्रीबाई फुले पर भी पत्थर फेंके गए थे। गांधी हत्या पहला उदाहरण नहीं है, शंभुक का भी पहले उदाहरण है।
हाँ,
आगरकर की तो शव यात्रा निकाली गई थी।
देखिए, ये सारे उदाहरण अंग्रेजी शिक्षा के आने के बाद के हैं, इसलिए इन सब की जिम्मेदारी मैं अंग्रेजी शिक्षा को मानता हूं। एक शंभुक का उदाहरण आप छोड़ दीजिए, मैंने कहा वैचारिक विरोध के आधार पर, वैचारिक विरोध का जहां तक चारवाक का आपने नाम लिया, आप इतिहास में कहीं बता सकते हैं?
फिजिकल टॉर्चर तो हर रिफॉर्मिस्ट को किया गया है।
आप मुझे बताइए चारवाक पर कौन से अत्याचार है और आप किस इतिहास के आधार पर कहना चाहते हैं?
शंभुक के बारे में थोड़ा सा एक्सप्लेनेशन दीजिए।
पहले आप चारवाक को वापस ले लीजिए, फिर मैं शंभुक का उत्तर।
हर रिफॉर्मिस्ट को फिजिकल टॉर्चर किया गया है आज तक। जो जहां तक मैं अयोध्या तक बोलता हूं कि अयोध्या के बारे में बात करने वाले जो लोग हैं और हिंदू धर्म में जो खराब नीतियां है या खराब अंधश्रद्धाएं है, उनके खिलाफ बोलने वाले आज के जो आज तक के नए नौजवान हैं अंधश्रद्धा निर्मूलन समिति के, उनको भी फिजिकल टॉर्चर का सामना करना पड़ा है। यही मैं आपको कहता हूं, क्योंकि ये आपकी बात सच नहीं है कि रिफॉर्मिस्ट को कोई तकलीफ नहीं दी गई और सिर्फ डिबेट चलाया गया या डायलॉग चलाया गया। फिजिकल टॉर्चर तो हुआ ही है और इसके तो इतने सारे उदाहरण हैं, आप इतिहास पढ़ के वो निकाल सकते हैं।
आपने चारवाक से प्रारंभ किया, मेरी आपसे प्रार्थना, या आप बोले या मैं बोलूं, मेरी आपसे प्रार्थना है कि चारवाक को किस प्रकार का कष्ट दिया गया, ये आप किसी इतिहास के आधार पर हमें बता दीजिए, तो मैं आपके प्रश्न का उत्तर देने का या अपने विचार को सुधारने का दोनों प्रयत्न करने के लिए मैं तैयार। आई एम ऑलवेज ओपन फॉर रेक्टिफिकेशन एंड करेक्शन। तो कोई मुझे बता दे कि चारवाक के इतिहास में कहाँ ये मिला हुआ है, या कम से कम आप स्वीकार करेंगे चारवाक को नहीं दिया गया कोई भी शारीरिक दंड, बाद में हुआ।
चारवाक का इतिहास ही मिटा दिया है ना, चारवाक को कुछ मालूम ही नहीं। चारवाक इतना लंबा जाने की जरूरत ही नहीं है ना। ज्ञानेश्वर है, तुकाराम आहे, मालूम ही नाही क्या किया। ज्ञानेश्वर आहे, तुकाराम आहे, ज्ञानेश्वराला वाईट टाकलं, तुकारामाला तर काय केलं, चारवाक पर्यंत जायचं कशाला?
मैं इस आक्षेप से सहमत नहीं हूं कि चारवाक का इतिहास मिटा दिया गया है, क्योंकि चारवाक को आप कृपा करके शांति से विचार कीजिए। चारवाक को हम लोग बृहस्पति का अवतार मानते हैं और चारवाक के नास्तिकवादों के जो सिद्धांत हैं वो बराबर तब से आज तक चले आ रहे हैं। और जहाँ तक मेरी भारतीय इतिहास की जानकारी है, वहाँ तक चारवाक को या उनके अनुयायियों को, जैसा कि मैंने कहा अंग्रेजी शिक्षा प्रणाली आने के पहले तक वैचारिक विरोध के आधार पर कोई उनको तकलीफ दी गई हो, ऐसा मेरी जानकारी में अब तक नहीं है। अगर आप प्रमाणों के साथ कोई बात दें तो मैं या तो उसका उत्तर दे सकूंगा या मैं अपने विचार सुधार सकूंगा, मुझे इसमें कोई आपत्ति नहीं है।
अच्छा,
शंभुक पर अगर आप चाहें।
The speaker, I think, has made his stand quite clear. I think we should go for other questions.
My name is Javed Anand. I'm from Communalism Combat. Dr. Naik has said repeatedly that the punishment for any crime depends on the gravity of the crime, and he has specifically talked about the American state and once about the Indian state, and saying for treason, if any official of the government of India, employed by the government of India, or any official employed by the government of the United States reveals the secrets of the states which compromise the integrity and sovereignty of that state, then he should be punished to death. And is there anything wrong in that? Or there has to be some punishment that follows? That is my impression. I stand corrected.
Yes.
Having said this, he then proceeds to make the point that Taslima Nasreen, for example, he says that there are so many contradictory reports in various papers that he can come to no conclusion whatsoever. Maybe he is also in doubt as to whether any Maulana has or has not passed a fatwa against Taslima Nasreen. But it seems to me that contained in that argument also is that if Taslima Nasreen has said anything against the Quran, because that is her firm belief, just as it is a firm belief of many other people that Quran is the word of Allah, then she can be tried by numerous authorities, including by Dr. Zakir Naik himself. If Taslima Nasreen were here today, he will know her age, he will know whether she's a gynecologist, whether she believes in Islam, etc., etc. At the end of which, he can pronounce some punishment for her, which could also mean chopping off opposite limbs or head or exile, or those four options is given. Now, if there are to be many centers of jurisdiction, I mean many people, whether it's a mullah or a pandit or a Shankaracharya or a pope or whatever it is, who can simultaneously decide what crime for what punishment, then I have a question. I come from the district of Allahabad, from a village in Allahabad, where there's a mosque in which I have prayed for many years during my years. I know for a fact, most of us Muslims know for a fact, as also the Hindus of the village, that in that mosque on the outer boundary there are statues which could only have come from some temple or another. If some Pandit from my village in Allahabad decides that a temple was destroyed here a few hundred years back or whatever it is, and for that crime that Pandit sitting in that village decides that the Muslims of that village be killed and all the Hindus killed, all the Muslims or as many Muslims as they can, is there something wrong with it? Is this what he's suggesting?
If he asks, please repeat the question, it is going to be very difficult.
Well, I'll summarize it. Can there be many centers? Can there be many centers of decision making in terms of what constitutes crime and what is punishment? Brother, thank you for the short speech. In your short speech, you have asked at least 10-15 questions, if not more. Whatever I can remember, one question. That's all the previous thing is nullified. If I don't answer, don't blame me. Because they misquoted me saying that the Indian government can punish her to death. I didn't say that. Punishment. What punishment? Depends upon the law of the government. Coming to your second part. You said that even Dr. Zakir Naik can call her here, can ask her age, can ask her profession, and you said it in very beautiful. Fine, no problem. Please let me complete my answer. I gave you enough time to pose a question. Enough time, please give me an opportunity to answer. And even Dr. Naik can sentence her to death or cut off her limbs, etc. No, Dr. Zakir Naik cannot. Dr. Zakir Naik cannot. I don't have the authority. I can give a fatwa. Please let me tell you what's the meaning of fatwa. Again, you may not be aware of the word. Arabic word fatwa means opinion. But my opinion has got no value. Since we believe in freedom of speech, every individual has a right to his opinion, including me, including you, brother. You can, like Kushwant Singh offers her his home, he has a right to his opinion. I can't object. But I can't sentence her. Only a qazi has a right to give judgment and the verdict. There's a world of a difference between fatwa and a verdict. Fatwa, I'd like to give the example, like suppose a lawyer, he gives his opinion to the judge, but the judge can differ from the lawyer. The fatwa need not be a judgment. Let me remind you that, brother. I may be an expert, which I'm not. I, as a doctor, cannot give a fatwa on Islam. Fatwa, in my personal opinion, yes, as an individual, but not as a scholar, neither as a judge, because I'm not a judge. Regarding your one summarized question, that can, and if I've forgotten the question, you can repeat, brother, that can the same crime have different punishments, or can different centers be set up for punishment? Correct, brother? Can you repeat the question, brother? Can there be more than one authority? For example, that's right. For example, in India, there are courts of law, which are set up to decide whether a crime has been committed. If committed according to the law of the land, what punishment should follow. In your view, whether in India or in Bangladesh or anywhere else, one is the state which kind of gives certain authorities to the judiciary. Can there be other centers of... Brother is asking me that can there be several centers of giving judgment in India first, then I come to Bangladesh. I'm sorry, again he has misunderstood the Islamic law. In India, the Muslim Personal Law Board can only give judgment on personal issues like divorce, like marriage, like inheritance. They cannot pass their law on criminal cases because we have a common criminal law in India. So the question is baseless. Regarding Bangladesh, I don't know. Again, don't think I'm trying to avoid the question. Again, I don't know how many boards or how many courts of law are there in Bangladesh. But if you talk of Islam in the previous ages, there was something like Khilafat, there was a Khalifa, and he was the head. There may be small courts, like how we have a problem in the low court, you go to a high court. If you have a problem in the high court, you go to Supreme Court. So there, the Khilafat, the main court was him. He was the Khalifa, he appoints the main chief judge, like how we have Supreme Court. If there are any small courts falters, you can go to the chief one. But today, the Khilafat has been abolished. But maybe countries may be having their own way of low court, high court, Supreme Court. You have to analyze the history of the country. Hope that answers the question, brother. It may be a new question, but I hope
I have your permission to just ask one question, that you cannot be confused about one issue, that some Maulana, however highly respected he may be, has not been made a judge or a small court or a high court or a Supreme Court in the country of Bangladesh. Does he have a right to give a public call for the head of Taslima Nasreen?
That's right. If you had heard my answer correctly, with attention, you would have got the answer. I said everyone, including you and I, have the right to give fatwa. Fatwa means opinion. Please let me complete. He gave a fatwa. His opinion was that to call for the head of Taslima Nasreen.
So you defend that? Anybody who kills Taslima Nasreen will get that. It's a call. It's not a debate.
That's right. Now 50,000 takas have just come now. First, your question did not include that. I answer to that. Please let me answer, brother. Then I'll give you an equal opportunity with the permission of the chair. Does anyone have the right to call for anyone's head, even if it be a fatwa or opinion? Even while giving opinion, you cannot slander anyone, neither can you abuse anyone. If it's an Islamic country, a person, Taslima Nasreen, can sue that Maulana, saying that he... Please let me complete, sister. See, I'm not interrupting your questions, so if you please not interrupt my answer, it will be better. I'm just giving a general opinion of Islam. Please, sister, if you allow me. She has a right, if it's an Islamic country. I don't know how far is Bangladesh an Islamic country, how far are they following the laws of Islam, I don't know. Maybe they're following, maybe they're not following. So she has a right, if she thinks that the death sentence put on her head is wrong, she has a right to take him to an Islamic court, if there is one, and sue. But let me link your answer with the comment laid down by the learned speaker, Father Pereira. He made a comment that it is very easy to frame anyone in the blasphemous law and sentence that person to death. Or taking the example of Taslima Nasreen, that it is not very easy, as easy, Father Pereira has said, because if you produce a witness in the court of law, if the crime is a small crime, 2 witnesses required. If the crime is great, 4 witnesses. And if any of those 4 witnesses falter, believe me, if any of those 4 witnesses falter during cross-examination, all 4 of them receive 80 lashes each. 80 lashes. It's not that easy. It's not as easy as we take an oath in the court of Indian government. मैं सच कहूँगा, सच के सिवा कुछ नहीं कहूँगा, and then you can lie. It's not that easy. You receive 80 lashes each, and believe me, it's very difficult to bear those lashes. It's not as easy as Father Pereira has made it sound. Hope that answers the question, brother.
Yes. No, I think we should.
Dr. Naik, साजिद रशीद उर्दू टाइम्स। हम लोग एक ऐसे मुल्क में रहते हैं जहां पर बहुत सारे फ़िरक़े के, बहुत सारे संप्रदाय के लोग रहते हैं और उसका अपना एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है जिसने लोगों को सज़ा देने का अपना एक मयार मुकर्रर किया है। ऐसे देश में रहते हुए क्या आप किसी को किसी भी किस्म की तज़हीक़ कुरान की मज़म्मत के लिए या उसकी गलत कहने के लिए क्या आप वो इस्लामी सजाएं तजवीज़ करेंगे जो इस्लाम में कही गई है, और क्या वो यहाँ पर इस मुल्क में जिसका अपना एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है क्या वो सही हो सकती हैं?
Brother has again asked a similar sort of question, that since we have different religions, can every religion follow their own law? Or suppose if anyone has abused the Quran, can you follow the Islamic law? Again, brother, let me clarify. Wherever the criminal law is in any country, you take whether Saudi Arabia, whether Iran, whether Pakistan, whether America, whether England, whether India, the criminal law has to be common. The civil law can change. The civil law can change. The criminal law in Saudi Arabia is same whether Muslim or non-Muslim. In India, the criminal law is same whether Muslim or non-Muslim. So you cannot have a different criminal law. You can give your comments, but you can give your opinion whether that person should be given punishment of 1 year or 2 years or death sentence, whatever it is, but you can't practice it because you have to practice a common criminal law. If Islamic State, then you have to abide by the Quran. You cannot deviate from the Quran. But since India is not an Islamic country, we cannot implement the Quranic law where it comes to criminal punishment. Hope that answers the question, brother.
I am Maria Sresh, a religious sister, and I want to ask Mr. Ashok Shahani, why did you translate the book Raja into Marathi?
At last, a simple question.
Well, I translated it. One thing is because I like the book. Another thing was it was some kind of an atonement, because Taslima had the courage to write the kind of book she wrote. The minorities being put to trouble, a lot of suffering, torture in her own country, which is a Muslim majority country. Whereas almost the same, or maybe to a lesser degree, there may be some difference. The same things happened in the December and January riots in Bombay. But I found that no literary person here, I'm a Maharashtrian, no Marathi author has had the courage to say that it has put us all to shame. Taslima had that courage and she did it.
Question to Dr. Zakir Naik. The fundamentalists of Bangladesh are themselves responsible for bringing Taslima Nasrim into the limelight by announcing hefty prices on her head. If they had instead ignored her and allowed her to have her say, this issue would not have risen at all, and perhaps it would not have come here to discuss this subject.
Brother asked a very good question, that if the so-called, in inverted commas, Muslim fundamentalists, so-called I say, if they would not have announced the price on her head, we would not have gathered here today. I agree with you. But you put the blame on the Muslim fundamentalist, I put the blame on the media. Difference of opinion. Even if an obscure organization like BSSP, Bangladesh Sahaba Sainik Parishad, who knew of it? No one. Even if the leader of that organization, Maulana Habibur Rahman, and I do know, brother, that somebody has called for that sentence. If an obscure person, an insignificant organization calls for that sentence, why does the Indian media has to highlight it? Front page. Imagine front page news. According to the High Commission, this is I'm quoting from the Delhi newspaper, according to the High Commission of Bangladesh, he said that the amount of news that the Indian media has given to Taslima Nasreen is not even 1% of the news that's there in the Bangladesh newspapers. So you ask me, are the Muslim fundamentalists to blame? You may blame them. I would say even if they are to blame, or whether they are not, irrespective of that, I believe the journalists of India and the papers of India, they are much more wiser. So they should not have highlighted it, and neither would be here to discuss the matter. Yes, brother.
The Indian media has highlighted this issue in order to save her life, because she's the only person. She's a woman and she's helpless in front of all these religious fanatics. So the Indian media is only trying to save her life.
That's right. Wait, please let me answer, brother, then you can continue the question. Brother, I said the Indian media tried to save from an obscure organization, insignificant Maulana Habibur Rahman. So today if you hear someone in the train saying, I'm going to kill the Prime Minister, you're going to give the headlines in your papers. No, it's a rhetoric question, brother. I don't want you to answer. Shh. Brother, please, brother. You have a right to ask a question later on. Let me complete my answer. So you said the Indian media. See, that's my opinion. My opinion can be wrong, brother. It's my opinion. I'm not saying my opinion has to be right. Some people in the audience may agree with my opinion, some people may not. So I feel that any insignificant person, suppose if maybe the call was given by the leading organization, then you have to think over it. I'm not commenting on the ban. I'm not commenting on the death call whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying, why did we have to give it headlines? Because for sensationalism. That's what I say. That's my opinion, brother. If you like it, you can take it. If you don't like it, you can refuse it. That's my opinion, brother.
I'll just add a correction. The call for the sentence to Taslima Nasreen is not that insignificant as he is trying to make out. The call has been given officially by the political party Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh.
I'm Professor Hamza Virani. I would like to ask Brother Ashok Sahani that you said that this journalist, they have put life of Taslima Nasreen in problem. And he says that Indian media is trying to save the life of Taslima Nasreen. So first you say, as a journalist, I don't know whether you are a journalist or not. No, good. So some journalists, they have put the life of Taslima Nasreen in danger, and he says that journalists are trying to save the life of Taslima Nasreen. I want to know what is right. Whether they have put her in problem or they are trying to take out her from the problem.
The problem is not that simple, of course. The problem is a bit complicated in the way, meaning the fundamentalists in Bangladesh had been itching for Taslima's head for a long time, even earlier to the interview that she gave to Statesman. And if you ask me my personal opinion, they might have been misled by a wrong idea of nationalism, because Taslima, on her way back to Dhaka from Paris, stayed in Calcutta, and on the top of it said that Calcutta is my second home. You tell that to anybody from Shiv Sena in Bombay, for instance. If Imran comes to Bombay and says that Bombay is my second home, I mean, the people in Pakistan are going to be bothered about it. Or even if a person like Gavaskar goes to the cancer hospital function, then there's a lot of hue and cry in the newspapers about why should Gavaskar go, and I mean, this is all mixed up. That's what I say. I mean, it's a bit complicated, but all the same, I mean, since the Statesman has not come out with an open apology, or open, unbarred, undeterred apology, that they had been the cause, they had been made the cause for this demand, I mean, things would have been different.
मेरा नाम रवि है, महानगर से आया हूँ। मुझे डॉक्टर व्यास से एक सवाल पूछना है। आपने कहा कि हिंदू धर्म में संवाद का बहुत महत्व है, मतलब जो लोग खुद को हिंदू समझते हैं उन्होंने संवाद करना जरूरी है अपोजिट विचारों के लोगों से। बाला साहब ठाकरे ने नामांतर के सवाल के ऊपर किसी भी दलित से सवाल नहीं किया। लाल कृष्ण अडवाणी जी ने बाबरी मस्जिद के मसले पर किसी भी मुस्लिम लोगों से संवाद करने की कोशिश नहीं की। कोर्ट की तरफ से हो रही थी, वो भी उन लोगों ने नाकारी है। क्या आप लोग, आपकी दृष्टि में बाला साहेब ठाकरे, लाल कृष्ण अडवाणी, ये लोग हिंदू है?
सबसे पहले मेरी प्रार्थना यह है कि इट्स बेटर दैट वी डिस्कस प्रिंसिपल्स एंड थियरीज देन वी डिस्कस पर्सन्स एंड इवेंट्स, क्योंकि फिर प्रश्न ही आ जाएगा। मैं हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों की जिम्मेदारी लेने के लिए तैयार हूँ, संसार भर के सारे हिंदुओं के कार्यों की जिम्मेदारी मैं नहीं ले सकता। हिंदू धर्मशास्त्र में कहीं अगर ये बताया गया हो, एक मिनट, हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों में कहीं अगर ये बताया गया हो कि जो आपके विरुद्ध विचार वाले हों या जो आपके विचारों को स्वीकार न करें उन सबको आप मार डालिए या उनके अंगच्छेद कर दीजिए, उनको देश निकाला दे दीजिए। ऐसा धर्मशास्त्रों में कहीं उल्लेख हो तो आप हमें बताइए, उस पर मैं विचार करने के लिए तैयार हूँ। किन्होंने क्या किया व्यक्तिगत रूप से, कौन क्या कर, और खासकर आपने जो प्रश्न पूछे हैं बिल्कुल राजनीतिक पार्टियों के बारे में। आज की भारत की राजनीति इस प्रकार की है कि मैं उससे दूर रहना ही पसंद करूंगा। हालांकि किसी भारतीय नागरिक के लिए या संसार में किसी नागरिक के लिए राजनीति से एकदम दूर रहना बड़ा कठिन है। फिर भी एक बात भी मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि आप स्वयं अपने आप से ही पूछ लीजिए, या ये इस प्रश्न का सबसे ज़्यादा सही उत्तर लाल कृष्ण आडवाणी या बाल ठाकरे साहब भी दे सकते हैं कि सनातन वैदिक धर्म के हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों के अनुसार वे अपने को हिंदू मानते हैं या नहीं। मैं कौन होता हूँ निर्णय देने वाला। हाँ, इतनी देर में चुप रहा। एक बात मैं जरूर कहना चाहूँगा, हो सकता है अब तक मैं भ्रम में रहा। नाइक साहब ने जो कहा कि फतवा का केवल ओपिनियन होता है, ये आज मैंने जाना। अब तक हम लोग ये समझते थे कि फतवा माने किसी धर्माचार्य के द्वारा या किसी उच्च अधिकारी के द्वारा कोई जो आदेश दिया जाए उसको फतवा कहते हैं, ऐसा मैं अब तक समझता था। हो सकता है मैं भूल में रहा हूँ।
तो बहुत सारे मुसलमान भी समझते हैं।
तो ये मेरी भूल हो सकती है, इसलिए मैं ये निवेदन करूंगा कि किसी व्यक्ति विशेष के बारे में मेरे पर्सनल ओपिनियन का कोई उपयोग नहीं है। यहाँ हम विचार ये कर रहे हैं कि हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों के अनुसार विरुद्ध विचार वालों के साथ क्या व्यवहार होना चाहिए। वहाँ जब संवाद की बात आती है तो मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया कि हमारे यहाँ पहले हमेशा पूर्व पक्ष और फिर उत्तर पक्ष रखा जाता है। आप ये जानते हैं कि दयानंद सरस्वती के समय तक शास्त्रार्थों की धूम मची रहती थी। दयानंद सरस्वती शायद प्रारंभिक सुधारकों में से, जिनको सुधारक लोग कहते हैं, धर्म में परिवर्तन करने वाले जो माने जाते हैं, उनमें दयानंद सरस्वती प्रारंभिक लोगों में से थे। आप अच्छी तरह से जानते हैं कि दयानंद सरस्वती के जीवन में और उनके पश्चात भी लगभग 50 वर्षों तक सनातनियों में और आर्य समाजियों में स्थान स्थान पर, शहर शहर में, गांव गांव में शास्त्रार्थ होते रहे। पुस्तकें छपती रहीं, सैकड़ों और हजारों पुस्तकें छपती रहीं। दर्शन शास्त्र में शंकराचार्य, रामानुजाचार्य आदि के विचारों में एक दूसरे के विरोध होते हुए आज तक हजारों पुस्तकें छपी हुई हैं। ये संवाद के ही तो उदाहरण है। आज का कोई एक नेता अगर किसी के साथ संवाद बिना किए कोई काम कर देता है तो उसकी जिम्मेदारी आप हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों पर कैसे डाल सकते हैं?
सवाल का जवाब नहीं दिया इन्होंने।
That can't be helped. That you can always escape that.
आपने ऐसा बोला कि यहाँ के कर्मों का फल परलोक में मिलता है, तो आप जो सनातन वैदिक धर्म के जो आप प्रतिनिधित्व कर रहे हैं, तो आपके हिसाब से कर्म किसको बोलेंगे? कर्म का क्या है डेफिनेशन?
आपने बड़ा अच्छा प्रश्न पूछा, क्योंकि अन्यथा भी मैं ये चाह रहा था कि खासकर साहनी साहब ने जो अपने भाषण में एक बात कही थी कि द प्रॉब्लम इज दैट एवरी रिलीजन हैज ए बुक एंड वी कांट बिलीव इन ए बुक रिटन बिफोर 100 years or 1000 years और crores of years। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि मेरा निवेदन ये है कि यू आर एट फुल लिबर्टी not to accept any religion and remain unreligious, but you have no authority or you have no liberty to say that we do believe a dharma and do not believe a dharma granth। इस पर आप ध्यान दीजिएगा। हम नास्तिक रहना या परलोक को न मानना, इसकी छूट सबको है। आज के ज़माने में भी है, पहले के ज़माने में भी थी। लेकिन आप ये कहें कि हम धर्म को स्वीकार करते हैं लेकिन धर्म ग्रंथ में परिवर्तन करते रहना चाहिए, उसके लिए आपको मेरी बात का उत्तर देना पड़ेगा कि धर्म का फल अगर परलोक में मिलता है, अगर मैं इसमें इसलिए कह रहा हूँ कि जो लोग ये मानते हैं कि धर्म का फल परलोक में मिलता है, उनकी ओर से ये प्रश्न है। अगर आप ये मानते हैं कि धर्म का फल परलोक में नहीं मिलता, धर्म का फल ईश्वर नहीं देता, तो धर्म कौन सी चीज़ है जिसको आप मानना चाहते हैं? धर्म है क्या चीज़? अब मैं आपके प्रश्न पर आता हूँ कि कर्म किसे कहते हैं। जहाँ तक हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों का प्रश्न, हो सकता है कुछ अन्य संप्रदायों में ऐसा हो कि आप 7-6 दिन कुछ भी करें, एक दिन किसी पूजा गृह में जाकर पूजा कर लें तो आप धार्मिक बने रह सकते हैं। कहीं ऐसा हो तो मैं नहीं जानता। हिंदू धर्मशास्त्रों का जहाँ तक प्रश्न है, हमारे यहाँ प्रातः काल से लेकर रात्रि तक और रात्रि से लेकर प्रातः काल तक 24 घंटे 12 महीने और जीवन भर शरीर, इंद्रिय, मन से जो कुछ चेष्टा, जो क्रिया हम करते हैं वो सब कर्म है और वो सब धर्मशास्त्र के क्षेत्र के अंतर्गत आता है। मैं किसी को किस दृष्टि से देख रहा हूँ ये भी एक कर्म है। अगर मैं अच्छी दृष्टि से, पवित्र दृष्टि से देख रहा हूँ तो मैं पुण्य कर रहा हूँ। अगर मैं अपवित्र दृष्टि से किसी पर को देख रहा हूँ तो पाप कर रहा हूँ, उसका भी फल मुझे मिलेगा। इसलिए कर्म को आप किसी एक सीमित क्षेत्र में कभी नहीं बांध सकते। शरीर, इंद्रिय, मन और बुद्धि, इन सब के जो भी प्रयत्न हैं वे सारे प्रयत्न कर्म हैं और ऐसा कोई प्रयत्न नहीं होता जिसका फल केवल यहाँ मिलकर रह जाए। हर कर्म का फल कुछ न कुछ यहाँ के बाद भी मिलता है। जिनको ईश्वर पर विश्वास न हो, जिनको परलोक पर विश्वास न हो, उनसे हम अलग बात कर सकते हैं। आज का मंच मैं समझता हूँ उसके लिए नहीं है। हम ये नहीं कहते जो ईश्वर को नहीं मानते उनको हम एकदम छोड़ देंगे, हम उन पर भी विचार करने के लिए तैयार हैं। और तर्कों के आधार पर शास्त्र को छोड़ दीजिए, किसी शास्त्र को आप कुरान को मत मानिए, पुराण को मत मानिए, वेद को मत मानिए, बाइबल को मत मानिए, फिर भी हम तर्कों से और युक्तियों से ईश्वर को सिद्ध कर सकते हैं, ऐसा हमारा विश्वास है। आप कोई अलग बैठक उसके लिए बुला सकते हैं, लेकिन जो ईश्वर को मानते हैं उनके लिए हमेशा यह प्रश्न है कि जो कुछ कर्म हम कर रहे हैं उसको कोई देख रहा है। हम अकेले में कभी, मैं 2 मिनट के लिए लेना चाहूँगा, मैं अकेले में, हमारे ये प्रसिद्ध है कि एक गुरु ने अपने शिष्यों को पूरा अध्यापन करने के बाद फल दे दिए, जाओ एक एक फल ले जाओ, ऐसी जगह खा लो जहाँ कोई न देखता हो। जब वे वापस आए तो किसी ने कहा कि मैं एक बंद कमरे में, मैंने कमरा बंद कर लिया, खा लिया। किसी ने कहा मैंने पानी में जाकर खा लिया, किसी ने कहा जंगल में जाकर खा लिया। एक शिष्य आया जिसने कहा गुरुजी मुझे ऐसी कोई जगह मिली नहीं जहाँ कोई ना देख रहा हो, इसलिए मैं फल वापस लेकर आ गया हूँ। तो ये भावना अगर मनुष्य में है कि हम जो कुछ कर रहे हैं उसे कोई अवश्य देख रहा है, और आज अगर हम छूट गए तो भी आगे फल मिलेगा, तो ही समाज में व्यवस्था ठीक रह सकती है। मैं एक बात और कहना चाहूँगा कि धर्म थोड़ी देर के लिए मान लीजिए कि काल्पनिक हो, मान लीजिए, हम नहीं मानते काल्पनिक, हम तो अत्यंत सत्य मानते हैं, पर जैसे कार्ल मार्क्स ने कहा कि धर्म अफीम की गोली है, थोड़ी देर के लिए हम मान भी नहीं कि वो अफीम की गोली है, तो भी समाज की सुव्यवस्था के लिए वही अफीम की गोली परम आवश्यक है। आप भ्रष्टाचार निवारण नहीं, जो भ्रष्टाचार आएगा उसको आप कहाँ रोकेंगे? हाउ लॉन्ग यू कैन गो पुलिस और पुलिस। आज सारी व्यवस्था इसलिए हो रही है कि परलोक और ईश्वर पर से लोगों का विश्वास हट गया है, धर्म पर से लोगों का विश्वास हो गया है, हट गया है, केवल अपनी बुद्धि पर लोगों को विश्वास है। अगर मैं अपराध करके पुलिस से बच सकता हूँ, या पुलिस को घूस खिलाकर बच सकता हूँ, या अंत में न्यायालयों में भी कुछ उपद्रव करके या कुछ भी करके, मैं नाम नहीं लेना चाहता, मैं अगर बच सकता हूँ तो अपराध करने में कोई दोष नहीं है। ये बुद्धिमत्ता की बात है। ज़्यादा बुद्धिमान जो होते हैं वो ज़्यादा अच्छे उपाय सोच करके अपने को बचा लेने का प्रयास करते हैं और बचते हैं, इसलिए वो सोचते हैं हम बच गए। अपराधों के बढ़ने का मूल कारण ये है, आप जितना अधिक सेकुलरिज्म का प्रचार करते जाएंगे उतना अधिक अपराध बढ़ता चला जाएगा, इस पर आप ध्यान दीजिएगा। अंततः इन अपराधों को नष्ट करने का एकमात्र उपाय है कि प्रत्येक कर्म पर हम ये ध्यान रखें कि ईश्वर भी उसे देख रहा है।
सुबह उठ के शाम तक सोने का कर्म, वैदिक सनातन कर्म क्या है? आप बोलिए, सुबह मुंह धोना ये कर्म से नहीं मिलेगा।
मेरा सवाल डॉक्टर व्यास से है। आप सनातन धर्म को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं यहाँ पर, और आपने कहा कि धर्म के अंदर कोई एडिशन नहीं होना चाहिए, और मैं आप अच्छा आपने नहीं कहा। मुझे आप ये बता सकते हैं कि किसी सनातन धर्म के किसी शास्त्र में हिंदू वर्ड लिखा हुआ है, या ये लिखा हुआ है कि ये हिंदू धर्म भी कोई आने वाला है? अगर ये नहीं है तो ये सनातन धर्म में ये हिंदू वर्ड कहाँ से आया, और ये हिंदू वर्ड सनातन धर्म से किस तरह से रिलेटेड है, और वो कहाँ से आया हुआ है?
पहली बात ये है कि हिंदू शब्द आप जो समझ रहे हैं कि वो पारसियों के या फारस वालों के आने के बाद हिंदू शब्द हमारी जाति के लिए प्रचलित हुआ, वो थोड़ा आपका भ्रम है। कालिका पुराण आदि कुछ ग्रंथों में हिंदू शब्द का पहले से हिंदवो विंध्यमाविशन वहाँ स्पष्ट उल्लेख है। हिंदू शब्द की उत्पत्ति आपको संस्कृत के पुराने कोशों में मिल जाती है। हिमालय से लेकर इंदु सरोवर तक एक प्रथा रही है, शब्द किसी का पहला शब्द और अंतिम शब्द, पहला अक्षर अंतिम अक्षर मिलाकर पूरा शब्द बन जाता है। आज भी ये प्रथा अन्य भाषाओं, डॉक्टर में DR लिख देते हैं, डॉक्टर का पहला अक्षर D, अंतिम अक्षर R, DR का मतलब डॉक्टर, MR का मतलब मिस्टर। वैसे हिमालय से लेकर इंदु सरोवर पर्यंत का जो देश है वो हिंदू देश है, इसलिए हिंदुओं का जो स्थान है वो हिंदुस्तान है, ऐसा उल्लेख पुराणों में और उसके कुछ प्राचीन साहित्य में मिलता है। नंबर 1। नंबर 2, भाषा विज्ञान की दृष्टि से अगर आप विचार करें तो सिंधु विदेशी जब यहाँ आए तो उनको सिंधु नदी सबसे पहले मिली, सिंधु के आधार पर सिंधुस्तान बना, और सकार का उच्चारण हकार करने की कई भाषाओं में प्रवृत्ति है। इसलिए जैसे सप्ताह का हफ्ता, सरस्वती का हरहवती, वैसे इस आधार पर भी सिंधु का हिंदू बनकर सिंधुस्तान से हिंदुस्तान बन गया है। और ये मैंने कभी नहीं कहा कि कोई एडिशन नहीं होना चाहिए, मैंने ये कहा कि जो मूल शास्त्रों के सिद्धांत हैं उन सिद्धांतों में परिवर्तन करने का हमें कोई अधिकार नहीं है, क्योंकि फल देने वाले हम नहीं हैं। इतना ही मैंने कहा है।
I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment.
Very briefly.
Just very briefly.
Only 10 minutes.
Regarding the question said by the brother to Dr. Vyas, he has given a correct definition of the word Hindu, and he said that Hindu is a person living in India, in Hindustan. But that's a geographical definition. If you agree with that definition, even I am a Hindu. But what brother was referring to is the theological definition of Hinduism mentioned in the Hindu scriptures, which I, being a student of comparative religion, I don't come across any. This definition has also been agreed by Swami Vivekananda, that Hindu is a geographical definition, meaning those people living on this side of the Indus Valley civilization. By that I'm a Hindu. But the religion should be called a Vedantist religion, those who follow the Vedas. And one more clarification regarding, you said that I had mentioned that fatwa is the opinion. Yes, I did mention it. But if that opinion is given by the judge sitting on the seat of judgment, it is taken as a judgment and a verdict. So fatwa can also mean a verdict. Let me clarify. And Quran clearly states in Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 59, that if you are in doubt, ask the person who knows. So if the Quran speaks about medicine, and if you have a doubt, you will take fatwa from a doctor. I have a right to give fatwa when Quran is talking about medicine. I have a right. I have a right to opinion. But if it's talking about fiqh and masail, I can give fatwa, but it will have no value. You'll have to go to a faqih. So in the same way, if the fatwa is given by a judge sitting on the judgment seat, it is taken for verdict. But given by a layman, it is just a layman's opinion. Sister has asked a similar question. She said, we have talked enough of Taslima Nasreen Zajja. Now we're going to talk on the satanic verses, which I can give a lecture on that, which I don't intend doing. Regarding the verdict, again it comes to the same thing as I mentioned earlier, the verdict does not change. Same. But if you want me to throw some light on the satanic verses, I do agree that Salman Rushdie has abused our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. He has abused his wives, etc., who are the al-Mu'mineen, the mothers of all the Muslims. He has. But what I fail to realize, that why hasn't some scholar thrown some light on what else has written on that book, which I will give my opinion. Why I'm giving the opinion? Because I have read that book, Satanic Verses. I have read that. If you want to read, you can go to London or America. There's a copy freely available. I had been to London and America. Just giving a gist on what Salman Rushdie, besides he abusing the Muslim characters, he has even abused his protectors. The London people, the British government who have protected them, he has abused them. On the very first page, or you could say the first page of the first chapter, actually it's page number 3, he has abused the Londoners. He says, London Bhai, the first page of first chapter, that's page number 3. London Bhai, and he abuses. I can't use that word, believe me, I can't use that word. I tried to use that word when I was having a dialogue or debate with a priest while I was quoting the Bible in Deuteronomy, chapter number 23, verse number 2, which says, the dash, I don't want to say the word, the dash, shall not enter the congregation until the 10th generation. If you want to know the exact word, I'll just give a small, brief joke, that when there was a party going on, everyone who wanted something on the table did some rhyming. So the Duke said, Queen so fine, pass the wine. The one person whose English pronunciation is not bad, and he wanted to have some custard. So he said, Duke the dash, pass the custard. So now you know what the word is. If you don't know, you can refer to the Bible. It is mentioned 3 times. And Salman Rushdie used that word 29 times. 29 times. Imagine. And the irony is that the British government speaks of freedom of speech. According to an article in the Daily News in London, 22nd of May, 1989, there was a big article called for ban. Ban for whom? Not for Salman Rushdie. Call for ban for Mickey. He was an actor from America. Mickey, he came and he used the 4-letter word for the policies of Margaret Thatcher. I'm sure you don't want me to repeat that 4-letter word. It is father, uncle, cousin, king. Still, if you don't know, ask the person who knows. He used that 4-letter word to describe the policies of Margaret Thatcher, and the MPs, the Tories of that parliament, they said, call for ban. Now Salman Rushdie uses that same word, but makes it active, adding ing, 4-letter, he makes it 7-letter. And in one paragraph, on page number 270, in one paragraph, he uses that word 4 times. 4-letter word, ing, making it active, describing the activities of Margaret Thatcher, and it goes down the throat of the Britishers. Why this biasness? An American actor uses a 4-letter word for Margaret Thatcher's policy, you call for ban. And none of those people who supported Salman Rushdie raised their voice to support that American actor. Why? Why the double policy? Because he uses it 4 times, making it active. And if you read that book, he's used that word 52 times, 1 for each week, 52 times. I've read the book, therefore I'm saying. And 5 times he's used only that 4-letter word. You can make a dictionary out of it. Ing American, ing allies, all these, you can make a dictionary out of it. And he has even abused the Prime Minister, the ex-Prime Minister, who was the Prime Minister at that time. And he says that, and he calls it a nickname, like he does for all the characters. He is called the Chamcha. He personifies himself as Chamcha or as the Jibreel or Spoonu. He calls Margaret Thatcher Maggie. And what he says, torture. You know what the meaning of torture? Torture means Thatcher. He says torture and full stop. 1-word sentence, beautiful. I do appreciate Salman Rushdie for his pen. 1-word sentence, torture, full stop. Maggie the 5-letter word. I don't want to repeat it. It's a female dog. He says torture, full stop. Maggie the 5-letter word. That's right, I'm answering the question, brother. Because she said that she wants me to throw some light on the satanic verses and on the verdict of Salman Rushdie. Regarding the verdict, it remains the same as my previous answer. Regarding throwing light, I'm throwing light, brother. If you give me the permission, just a couple of more minutes. So that, how many of you out here knew all this was mentioned in the satanic verses? Oh, very good, 2, 3. So I'm 3. So did you know all this was mentioned? Do you know torture referred to Thatcher? Oh, very good. We have intelligent people out here, but the masses don't know. So, fine. Please let me answer, brother. Let me answer. I do agree that people will say that Margaret Thatcher, she's an iron lady. She won't get moved. She's very strong. I do agree. Even if you call her that 5-letter word, even if you call her a female dog, she won't get moved. But imagine if you go to her son, Mark Thatcher. You might have seen him on TV playing soccer, that rugby. If you go to Mark and say, Mark, Salman Rushdie has called you an SOB, son of a 5-letter word, I'm sure Mark will hammer you. He will not believe in freedom of speech. If you tell Mark that Salman Rushdie has called you an SOB, son of a 5-letter word, he will surely hammer you. Even the British people are sensitive, but their sensitivism is, everyone has different levels of sensitivism. Some people may be sensitive in particular word. Like for example, if you go on the road, brother, people on the roadside, they keep on abusing each other. Maa ke upar, bhen ke upar, the same word which Salman Rushdie has used in his. Imagine he uses Hindi word, bhen and 4-letter word. So, if those people, if you abuse that pie, he's not sensitive at all because he's used to abuse. But if you call him in a very plain language, which is less insulting than the abuse, and tell that maybe your mother is a prostitute, even that roadside man will feel bad. He will feel hurt. Every man is sensitive depending upon his individual field. And the British government, which calls for freedom of speech, it does not believe in freedom of speech, because when Sheikh Zidad said that give me 5 minutes on the BBC to quote only the verses that Salman Rushdie has said, and I will give 50,000 pounds to any charitable organization, they refused. ABC, American Broadcasting Corporation, they refused. He said, I will pay $50,000 only to quote. You believe in freedom of speech? I will quote Salman Rushdie's book, give you $50,000. They didn't agree. This is as far as freedom of speech goes. And regarding the verdict, sister, the answer is same as I gave for Taslima Nasreen.
I'd like to say something, and very briefly. As I said earlier, the fatwa of Khomeini is inexcusable. If it could be revoked, or rather it could be revoked, as that recent news item said, about 5 years later now, since this thing, it could have been revoked 5 weeks later. But it's not been revoked because of political reasons. That's the first thing, as I keep on insisting. In many of these religious quarrels, look for the political angle in it. That's the first. Secondly, I don't think that Rushdie himself is entirely to be excused either. He has deliberately adopted what I would call a very Western, arrogant position. Now, if you believe in freedom of speech without responsibilities, be ready to take the reaction from wherever. So instead of going underground, I would have said, with all your money, stand up and be counted. If I abuse you in public, I should be prepared for a kind of reaction from you and not go underground. The very government that he abused earlier is the one that is protecting him. I think there's a great anomaly over here, but realize that there's no logic in these matters. Realize, for one thing, that there is, in the Anglo-Saxon world particularly, a growing feeling that militant Islam, in the Islamic fundamentalism, has now taken the place as enemy number one after the death of communism. Communism is no longer now any kind of military threat. Instead, it is now militant Islam. You know all these things from the Gulf War, you know, Iran, and so on and so forth. And that's why, as I said a little earlier, you must understand that a lot of fundamentalism comes from, firstly, a certain vision of society which is not shared by a Western secular ethos. Secondly, that a lot of countries in West Asia particularly are reacting to a lot of Western arrogance and reacting to a post-colonial epoch, whereas they would like to stand on their feet as independent nations and realize that they can't. Even the rich Arab countries cannot. You know that, for the matter of fact. So understand that a lot of these gut reactions to Rushdie as a symbol, or George Bush as another symbol, or Israel as another symbol, all these things come in a vast and very complicated global scenario in which now Islamic fundamentalism is the latest whipping boy, which earlier, for example, it would have been Russia, the Soviet bloc, and so on. Enough.
This is positively the last question. Yeah. Yeah, you can.
We've been talking largely about Taslima, and I think it's a little out of proportion, because last year in Bombay, we had a situation where the Illustrated Weekly of India published an article on Shivaji, and the Times of India first time apologized. My question is that copies of the Times of India were burned. There was a threat of suppression of freedom of expression in a different fashion. It was imminent threat, death threat. In some sense, are we not living in a self-curtailed sort of cultural fascist state in India, where Shivaji, who was not a religious hero, for example, today has become one, and there are numerous other examples. Whereas obviously the Taslima case are more glamorous and also more violent because of the death threat. But isn't this top-level Maharashtrian papers even supported the action and saying that Shivaji has to be revered?
I entirely agree with you, and the point is just this, that if somebody is to be revered, then he has to be put beyond criticism. I don't think we live in a society in which that principle would work. I think everything needs criticism. Everything can be criticized. Why not? Why not? Whether it is religion, whether it's a religious person, whether it's king, or whether it's, those persons in power, why not? That is freedom of expression.
So if you can allow me, because this question is to Chairman, please.
Chairman?
I want to ask you
Me?
about
Yeah.
I hope you are a journalist. Then this question will be to you.
Okay.
So as Brother Ashok Sahni said, that it is journalists who have put the life of Taslima Nasreen in problem because of irresponsible behavior. And we see that this journalists, they do irresponsible things. So what is the punishment to such irresponsible journalists in your society of journalists? Because of their irresponsibility, many problems are created in this country. So what punishment is there for those type of people in your society of journalists?
I am a journalist by profession, but here I am a chairman. And chairman always says, no comment. So that is my reply. Anyone, is there to be a vote of thanks, or what is the procedure now? Pardon? What about the
fundamentalism, or we should support reformed fundamentalism?
One last question on karma, because I think being Indians, we are so fond of karma. It's better to end with yes, last, positively last.
पहला निवेदन ये है कि हिंदू धर्म शास्त्रों में दलित नाम का कोई शब्द नहीं है। ये अंग्रेजों का दिया हुआ डिप्रेस्ड का अनुवाद के रूप में चल पड़ा है। हमारे यहाँ भाइयों के समान, एक बड़ा भाई एक छोटा भाई, अग्रज और अंत्यज, ये शब्द हमारे यहाँ चल रहे हैं। अब रही बात ये कि उनका क्या कर्म है, माने आप अगर ये जानना चाहें ब्राह्मणों, क्षत्रियों, वैश्यों, शूद्रों, इन सब के अलग अलग क्या कर्म होते हैं, तो मैं संक्षेप में इतना ही कहूँगा कि कुछ धर्म या कुछ कर्म ऐसे हैं जो मानव मात्र के लिए समान हैं। धृति, क्षमा, दमः, अस्तेयम, शौचम, इंद्रिय निग्रह, इस प्रकार के मनु के बतलाए हुए कुछ धर्म ऐसे मानव मात्र के समान हैं। फिर कुछ कर्म ऐसे होते हैं जो एक एक व्यक्ति के लिए अलग अलग हो सकते हैं। वो एक एक व्यक्ति के लिए अलग अलग कर्म हो सकते हैं। उनको कृपा करके आप इस दृष्टि से नहीं देखें कि ये छोटा है या ये बड़ा है, ये अच्छा है या ये बुरा है, ये सम्मानजनक है या अपमानजनक है। समाज के धारण के लिए सभी के सभी कर्म परम आवश्यक होते हैं। समाज के धारण के लिए कोई कर्म ऐसा नहीं है जो अनावश्यक हो या जिसको हम छोटा या अपमानजनक समझें। एक बात मैं और कहना चाहूँगा, मैं एक वैद्य हूँ। किसी भी हॉस्पिटल में, किसी भी दवाखाने में, मैं केवल 2-3 मिनट लूँगा, किसी भी हॉस्पिटल में या किसी भी दवाखाने में ये व्यवस्था नहीं होती कि पेशेंट जाए और अपने आप दवा चुन ले। सब जगह यह होता है कि पेशेंट को जाकर किसी डॉक्टर के सामने अपने को पेश करना पड़ता है। डॉक्टर उसका निदान करता है और वो उसको बतलाता है कि तुम इस दवा से अच्छे होगे, ये दवा तुम लो। हिंदू धर्म में ठीक यही व्यवस्था है। हमारे यहाँ जो आप अपने मन से जो करना चाहें वो आप कर लें, वो आपके लिए धर्म हो जाएगा और उसका आपको अच्छा फल मिल जाएगा, ये नहीं हो सकता। आपके लिए क्या कर्म है ये आपका धर्मशास्त्र आपको बतलाएगा। वो कर्म करने पर ही आपको अच्छा फल मिलेगा। इसमें जिसको बंधन लगता हो, इसमें जिसको अपमान लगता हो, इसमें जिसको धर्मशास्त्र के प्रति द्वेष उत्पन्न होता हो, मेरे दृष्टि से वे गलती पर हैं, वे भूल कर रहे हैं। क्योंकि अगर वैद्य के नाते फिर मैं एक उदाहरण दूंगा। मेरे पास 4 रोगी आते हूँ, एक को मैं गोली देता हूँ, एक को काढ़ा देता हूँ, एक को मैं कड़वी दवा देता हूँ, एक को मैं चाटने की च्यवनप्राश जैसी मीठी चीज़ दे देता हूँ। अगर जब तक मेरी नीयत साफ है कि चारों के रोग दूर करने के लिए मैं प्रयत्न कर रहा हूँ, जिसका रोग गोली से दूर होगा उसको गोली देता हूँ, जिसका काढ़े से होगा उसको काढ़ा देता हूँ, जिसको च्यवनप्राश से होगा उसको च्यवनप्राश देता हूँ, जब तक मेरी नीयत साफ है, मैं सबको अच्छा करना चाहता हूँ, तब तक आप मुझ पर पक्षपात का आरोप नहीं लगा सकते कि उसको आपने चाचन दिया और मुझको काढ़ा क्यों दे रहे हैं। मेरी नीयत खराब हो तो आप दोष लगा सकते हैं। धर्मशास्त्र या ईश्वर की नीयत में हम कोई खराबी नहीं मान सकते। इसलिए किसका कल्याण किस कर्म से होगा ये ईश्वर और उनके बाद ऋषियों ने जो हमें बताया है उस पर विश्वास करने से ही हमारा कल्याण हो सकता है। मनमाना हम कुछ कर्म करके ये चाहें कि हमारा कल्याण हो जाएगा तो वैसे ही होगा कि आप एक ऐसा हॉस्पिटल खोल दीजिए, सब दवाइयाँ पड़ी हैं, रोगी आए कोई भी दवा ले और चला जाए, क्या परिस्थिति होगी आप सोच लीजिए। जी ये फिर एक व्यक्तिगत प्रश्न हो गया। माने आप मेरे नहीं पूछ रहे कि मैं उस कर्म को जी
तुम्हारा जो क्या कर्म है, तुम्हारे धर्मशास्त्रों ने जो किया है, तुम्हारे धर्मशास्त्रों ने जो बताया, तुम्हारा कर्म क्या वो कर रहे हैं क्या नहीं कर रहे?
इस प्रश्न का उत्तर मैं देने को तैयार हूँ। उसके बारे में एक चीज जान लूंगा कि क्या आपने मेरे बारे में जान रखा है कि मैं कौन से कर्म करता हूँ या नहीं करता। अच्छा, दूसरा ये कि ये जानने, मान लीजिए एक बात मैं बता दूं, अगर मैं उन कर्मों को ठीक से कर रहा हूँ तो मेरा कल्याण होगा, अगर मैं उन कर्मों को ठीक से नहीं कर रहा हूँ तो मेरा अकल्याण होगा। इससे ज्यादा जानकर आप या ये सभा क्या करेगी? बस नहीं, वैसे मैं बता दूं, हम लोग आस्तिक एक मिनट केवल आस्तिक होने का दावा करते हैं। हम ये क्लेम करते हैं कि धर्मशास्त्रों के एक एक अक्षर पर विश्वास करते हैं और अधिक से अधिक पालन करने का प्रयत्न करते हैं। 100% पालन करने का दावा मैं समझता हूँ इस युग में कोई नहीं कर सकता, पर मैं व्यक्तिगत रूप से अधिक पालन करने का प्रयत्न करता हूँ। ये आश्वासन आपको देना चाहता हूँ। ब्राह्मण के धर्म हैं यज्ञ करना, यज्ञ कराना, अध्ययन करना, अध्यापन करना, दान और प्रतिग्रह, 6 कर्म जो ब्राह्मण के बताए गए हैं, उन सबको मैं अपनी ओर से अधिक प्रयत्न करके कर रहा हूँ। ये मैं आपको विश्वास दिला देता हूँ। पर यदि मैं नहीं कर रहा हूँ तो मेरा दोष है, हिंदू धर्मशास्त्र का नहीं। इसका फल मुझे मिलेगा, हिंदू धर्मशास्त्र को नहीं और किसी को नहीं। मैं समझता हूँ इतने से आपको संतोष होना चाहिए।
This is positively the last question.
To Dr. Zakir Naik, it has been quoted by Taslima Nasreen, as it is said, that woman is your tilt, you may go as you like. Do you like to give any comment on this? Thank you.
I do agree that Taslima Nasreen, and I've read the controversial column in which she has mentioned that in the Quran it is mentioned that the women are the tilt. Sorry, it is not the tilt. She has not mentioned that. That's what the Quran mentioned. She has mentioned that for the husband, the woman is the farmland, not the tilth. The Quran mentions the tilth, but it is approximately the same meaning. She has mentioned that it is mentioned in the Quran. She does not give the reference. That for the husband, the wife is the farmland and you can approach them when you like. Along with that, she has said that the women are considered as properties. And she quotes the Quran and saying Surah Imran, that the woman, the gold, everything are possession. The woman, the children, the gold and horses are the possession. Again, she is misquoting. She did not give the complete quotation. She was referring to Surah Imran, chapter number 3, verse number 14, which says that the woman and sons, the woman and sons and the gold and silver and the horses branded for excellence and the farmland are possessions which a man is proud of. Which man is not proud of a good wife? Quran says woman, including wife and daughters and son. Which father is not proud of his son? Which husband should not be proud of his wife? And which wife should not be proud of the husband if he's good? So where is Quran talking that as though they're properties? And regarding the first question, that Quran mentions that the women are as farmlands, she does not give the quotation. Where are you going to find in the full Quran? Where is it mentioned in the Quran that wives are considered as farmland? She is referring to Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 223. But for the exact answer, you'll have to refer to the previous verse. Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 222, and then come to 223. Verse number 222 quotes that when they ask thee concerning menstrual periods, I'm quoting the Quran, you can check it up. Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 222, when they ask thee concerning menstrual periods, tell them it's a hurt and pollution. So do not approach your wife during the period. Approach them after they're clean. And any doctor will tell you that if you have intercourse during menstrual periods, it will hurt the wife, and besides that, it will cause certain diseases. It will be harmful for the wife as well as for the husband. So Quran is very scientifically based, telling do not approach your wife when during the menstrual courses. And then the verse continues. The next verse, Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 223 says that your wives are like the tilth. Approach your tilth when you like. And approach them in the way Allah has ordained you. Quran is saying, don't approach in the time of the menstrual period. Otherwise, you have to be good to them whenever like. You can approach them whenever they like, they can approach you. So what's the harm in that? She misquotes as though women are like property. This verse is linked with the earlier verse talking about should wife be approached during menstrual period, and the Quran says no. It's a hurt and pollution for both. Hope that answers the question, brother.
Friends, we had a very interesting... Oh, I think we had enough. I think we should stop now.
Speech has said that if anybody follows secularism, there will be a problem. He is representing Sanatan Dham. That means you want to say Sanatan Dham by the very nature is fundamentalist?
No, I can't allow this question because it's already way past time. So we all sit... Well, since the learned...
my request to Chairman is...
Make it a very brief answer.
That just we are talking about freedom of expression. There should be freedom of questioning also. Please repeat your question.
If you follow secularism, you won't be able to solve any problem. That means you are representing Sanatan Dham. That means with the opinion or the view of Sanatan Dham, you want to say that by the very nature, Sanatan Dham is fundamentalist. That means you want to go against secularism. Then how can you blame Muslim fundamentalism?
There are three parts of this question. Firstly,
2 minutes.
whether...
2 minutes per part.
All right. 2 minutes per part. Thank you. I thought 2 minutes for the whole question. Firstly, the secularism, the anti-word for secularism is not fundamentalism. The anti-word for secularism is theism. To believe in God, to believe in the world hereafter, to believe in the principle that whatever we are doing here, we have to answer somewhere. This is the principle against the secularism. So if we accept this principle, there will be solution for all problems. If you don't accept this thing, then problems will not be solved. I never said that fundamentalism is the solution for all the questions. Part 1. Part 2, I never criticized the Muslim fundamentalism in the way it's being done. If Dr. Zakir Naik is correct, the way in which he put the principles, that fundamentalism means that we should have faith and we should have knowledge of the fundamental principles of Islam and we should follow and practice it, then I 101% agree with him. This type of fundamentalism is always welcome. The unfortunate part is that many times every good thing is being misused. We should always know what is being misused. Whether Islam is misused, fundamentalism of Islam is being misused, or it is whether it is used properly or it is being misused. Anything even God can be misused. Even God can be misused. So the responsibility is of the person who is misusing the fundamentalism or misusing the religion. It's not the religion which is a block. It's not the fundamentalism in this definition which is a block. It is the misuse of religion, and misuse of what will not be blocked. Misuse of democracy, you are knowing what is happening. Misuse of secularism, you are knowing what is happening. And what was the third part of your question? Is it covered? Are you satisfied?
Yes, we are all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming for this program. Thank you very much for attending.
Yeah.